Since the dawn of time, people have really liked it when images move. Take Grug the caveman, for example. Grug realized that if he superimposed different cave illustrations on top of each other, depending on the angle and direction of lighting one glimpsed the drawings from, different illustrations would catch the light at different times. And so if one viewed the drawings with, say, a flickering fire in hand, the drawings would appear to move. Nifty, eh? Well, things were about to get much more nifty when thousands of years later, people realized that taking a bunch of images and flickering between them extremely quickly produces the illusion of motion. First came the thaumatrope, then the phenakistoscope, then the zoetrope, then the praxinoscope, then the zoopraxiscope. And before we knew it, we had fluid moving images before our very eyes, and a whole lot of different scopes. And what did we call it? Film. But not all film had to be filmed, if you catch my drift. And people quickly started to realize that, including one Walt Disney. Having become interested in animation after working on commercials that made use of moving cutout shapes, Walt saw cinematic potential in the future of animation, though not via cutouts. He favored cell animation, in which different drawings would be drawn onto a transparent animation cell and composited over top of a static background, allowing for more dynamic animation. He hastily began work on creating his very own iconic mascot, inspired by the likes of Felix the cat. You all know exactly where this is going. This led to the creation of the iconic Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. Unfortunately for Walt, however, he didn't own the copyright to this character and quickly found that he'd been screwed out of ownership by his parent company, Universal. For all intents and purposes, Oswald the Lucky Rabbit was essentially stolen from him, along with half his team of animators. Gee, sure hope that never happens again. I guess Oswald wasn't so lucky after all. So Disney said, fuck it. Made another mascot called Mickey Mouse, you may have heard of him, and put his focus into building up his own studio, Disney Studios. You may have heard of that one too. Mickey Mouse made his debut in the short film Plane Crazy. Unfortunately, no one really liked Plane Crazy, so he tried sticking Mickey into another short film called Steamboat Willie, and it was a hit, proving definitively that boat movies are better than plane movies. Steamboat Willie was the first animated short ever to sync its audio to its visuals, allowing it to truly come alive with a sense of melody. What followed was animation's first ever golden age. Between Disney Studios and its competition, everyone was racing to push the medium to its limits. And by limits, I mean they all made short films where four people dance identically next to each other. Because that was just in at the time. You have no idea how many of these I've watched at this point. The progression that took place from the 20s to the 30s is staggering. Their films became increasingly complex and dialogue heavy. Characters evolved from simple rubber hose caricatures to expressive and emotional beings. And most noticeably, by the late 30s, Disney shorts were in full, dazzling Technicolor, which Walt Disney personally owned the rights to for a few years. Yes, Disney exclusively owned color for a bit. You think they're a monopoly today? It was only a matter of time until the company expanded in the realm of full-length motion pictures, and in 1937 they did exactly that with Snow White. The film smashed the box office and made clear that going forward, the real money was in making movies, and so they doubled down with a follow-up film, Pinocchio. But this thing called World War II also started around this time, and people were a little too distracted to be watching cartoons that weren't propaganda, so Disney contributed most of its output into making propaganda, putting most of its creative ambitions on hold for the time being.
Am I glad to be a citizen of the United States of America?
And to make matters worse, during the production of the film Dumbo, Disney's animators became increasingly dissatisfied with their paychecks. Some top animators were being paid almost 10 times as much as others to do the exact same amount of work, so they did the only thing they could. Strike! Walt was so pissed off by this, Walt was so pissed off by this that he retaliated against the strikers, blacklisting and retroactively revoking their credits on movies like Fantasia, tried to punch one of them in the face, and worst of all, drew them as ugly, gross clowns in Dumbo. Eventually, the government had to step in to ensure a deal was reached that involved the reinstatement of all employees fired before the strike, the complete and total equalization of pay, and ensured rights for animators going forward. And yes, this is back when the US government helped to protect unions. Believe it or not, that was a thing at one point. After the dust settled, Disney Studios had lost almost half its total workforce, many of whom split off to start a rival studio. Sounds weirdly familiar. After this, Disney scaled back a little and spent the next decade releasing shorter compilation films as opposed to single narrative ones. But by the time the 50s came around, they had finally gained back the confidence to make real movies. So they did, starting with Cinderella. After this, what followed was a period of success the studio had never known before. 'Twas hit after hit after hit. Cinderella, Alice in Wonderland, Peter Pan, Lady and the Tramp all back to back. The studio was on a roll, building theme parks, branching out into hugely successful TV shows, and it seemed like they could do no wrong. Then Sword in the Stone was released. But after that, they got right back on the wagon with their smash hit The Jungle Book, an iconic film everyone would come to know and love. Except for, unfortunately, Walt Disney himself, because he passed away shortly before the film was released, having gotten cancer from watching Sword in the Stone. The silver lining to this was that he'd never have to go through the trauma of paying his animators decent wages ever again. Rest easy, Prince. So Daddy Disney's dead. What are you gonna do? Well, taking after a more modernist style pioneered by studios like UPA, which was actually an offshoot of Disney following the second animator rebellion, Disney Studios opted for a rougher Xerox animated style wherein rough lines would be left in the final product, skipping an entire phase of cleanup and making production cheaper. This made everything look more scratchy, but also more, modern. And this style worked well for them for a few decades more. Though throughout the 70s, their films gradually made less and less money. During the development of The Fox and the Hound, certain animators once again took issue with upper management, but this time it didn't concern pay, but rather creative interference. Many working on the film felt a certain character needed to die for the sake of the plot and the realization of the film's themes, but Disney executives wouldn't have it. The result of this standoff was yet another animator rebellion, this time led by a young chap named Don Bluth, who went on to start his own rival studio and take a ton of Disney talent with him. There's starting to be a pattern here. In the wake of this disaster came another, even bigger disaster called The Black Cauldron, a movie notable for three primary reasons. A, it is by far the most expensive film Disney had made up to that point. B, it is nowadays considered a contender for their worst film. And C, it almost killed the studio entirely. Like, it came really close, but Disney decided to press on, despite the financial losses. And you know what? They're probably pretty damn glad they did, because their next film was
Disney's most beloved animated classic, The Little Mermaid.
The Little Mermaid injected the studio with a dearly needed new lease of life following their dark age. It harkened back to the themes and tones of their classic films, but projected a more modern sense of humor and morality onto it. The result was a formula for money. Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, The Lion King, Mulan, Tarzan. It was like they could do no wrong. They were making so much money they didn't even care that a fourth rebellion was fomenting amongst their ranks, this time led by Jeffrey Katzenberg, who'd grown sick of the studio's higher-ups and decided to break away to form a studio of his own, called DreamWorks. Well, at least they didn't care until DreamWorks became their main competitor and arguably started eating into their profits. Then they started caring even more when DreamWorks stole half their employees by offering them better pay and treatment. And then they really started to care when their movies started flopping because of their refusal to embrace the more satirical and adult subject matter other studios were exploring. So they tried copying DreamWorks, but without the talent behind Katzenberg's studio, the results were less than stellar. It almost looked as if they were primed for another dark age. And then Frozen came out.
Let it go, let it go. I am one with the wind and sky.
I mean, Tangled's a better movie, but Frozen's the one that everyone decided to care about for some reason. What did they do differently this time? Stopped trying to be DreamWorks. And it went a long way. In the wake of Frozen's success, Disney started making more money than they had ever made before, ever, ushering in a new renaissance. Yay!
And when no one was looking, they became a giant evil mega-corporation conglomerate that owns literally everything and has a complete monopoly over entertainment.
They have acquired over 200 companies including ABC, Marvel, Lucasfilm, ESPN, A&E, Hulu, The History Channel, Pixar, Star, Fox, and the eternal rights to your soul, but that one's a secret. It's hidden in the Disney Plus agreement. Let it go. Let the monopoly go. Let go of the entertainment industry, please.
And minus a few flops here and there, a duel to the death between two CEOs, and a feud with the governor of Florida, which they totally won, by the way, that pretty much brings us to where we are today. So why am I lecturing you guys about the history of Disney? Because it's important, damn it. If you want to understand what makes a good Disney film, you need to understand the history of the studio and what they've been trying to do for all this time. At the end of the day, that really is the goal of this video, apart from, ranking all the Disney movies. Defining what a good Disney film is and what separates it from a bad one. To me, a good Disney film has a little something for everyone. It's a movie that fires on all cylinders. That's certainly the impression they give with their marketing and all the interviews I've seen with the creatives that work there. They're trying to create a movie that appeals to everyone, old or young. And obviously, that's no easy feat. In this video, I'm going to be looking at the underlying message of each of these films. If there is one, there isn't always. I'm going to be looking at how fleshed out the characters are, how innovative the animation, how efficient the pacing, and overall which films execute their core ideas without feeling bogged down in any way. To me, the worst Disney films are the ones that feel cloudy and muddled by bad pacing, uninteresting characters, or questionable creative decisions that actively pull viewers away from these core ideas. But before we can go any further, I need an outfit that truly screams Disney, because this just ain't doing it. Oh, snap. It's ranking time. So here we are. The bottom of the list. The worst Disney movie ever. When it comes to ranking videos, most people are excited to see what the top will be, but I would argue the bottom of the list is just as exciting. It's the yin to the list's yang. After all, a top has no meaning without a bottom. And likewise, a bottom no meaning without a top, and the top and bottom link up to create each other, and the power bottom has no meaning without a submissive service top, and what were we talking? What is the worst Disney film? It's Sword in the Stone. I didn't even have to put much thought into that one. Man, if only I owned the poster for this film. Oh wait, it's 2024. We got computers. Released in 1963, this is Disney's 18th feature film, and it is their very worst. In my opinion. The year was 1963, and Disney's most recent film was 101 Dalmatians, which had pivoted the studio in a new visual direction. After disappointing box office returns on films like Sleeping Beauty, 101 Dalmatians had seemed to be a massive bounce back for the studio financially. Who knows, with another hit they may have been able to pull themselves back to the levels of success and financial security they'd enjoyed in the early 50s. So it sure is a shame their next film was The Sword in the Stone. Based on the children's book of the same name by T.H. White, Sword in the Stone tells the story of Arthur and his quest to, meet Merlin and then be coerced by Merlin into transforming into various animals for some reason, and then becoming king via luck. Look, regardless of the ignominious reputation this film has as being a disaster for Disney, it also happens to not be a very good film on its own merit. And by that, I mean that this is the least polished Disney film I have ever seen. The whole thing looks weirdly reminiscent of those CDI Zelda games, and reused animation is abound.
If I ever get my hands on you, little fool, you better get it, or don't you dare come back!
It doesn't seem like they storyboarded half these scenes, and shots can be downright clunky.
Dum, doodly, 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 dum. This is the best part now. Hey, get this, figure this, make it this more.
The conversation was, he's British, and we have to have sort of a British-sounding magic.
Get this, figure this,
making us bump.
Also, there are a lot of missed opportunities for visual jokes. Example, there's a scene when Arthur's being pursued by a wolf that he's completely unaware of, and the way the scene conveys this is to just keep cutting to a bunch of close-ups of the wolf that kind of interrupt the scene.
Sir, I don't have any problems.
Oh, Pa, everybody's got problems.
I do suspect that this poor storyboarding is a symptom not only of the film's age, but of its notoriously rushed production. Because in most Disney films, the animators would have been more clever and subtle with how they inserted the wolf into the scene. Why not have the wolf lurk in the background of some of these shots, slowly coming closer and closer to Arthur, and as the tension slowly builds and it seems that the wolf's finally going to close in, it's at that exact moment that Arthur moves, resolving everything in a comedic fashion without even having to cut away. The film as it is tries something similar, but the unnecessary cuts and overemphasis placed onto the wolf's presence diminishes the effectiveness of the humor. It also doesn't help that the gag goes on and on and on and never really builds anywhere or raises the stakes. It's just a wolf trying and failing to eat Arthur and then getting hurt repeatedly for multiple minutes. And we haven't even talked about the story yet. This film's plot is fucking completely random. There is no through line, no progression between scenes. There is no clear end goal for what Arthur and Merlin are even doing. Arthur legitimately just shows up to Merlin's house by accident, and then Merlin goes like, "I foresaw that you would come here."
So, you did drop in for tea after all. Now, my name is Merlin.
Oh, my name's Arthur.
Merlin basically just tells him, "Now we're gonna go on a wacky adventure." And Arthur's like, "Okay." And then he starts transforming him into random animals to teach him lessons about something. And it's like, why is Arthur cool with this? Why doesn't Merlin properly explain to Arthur what he's training him for? And the worst part is that the actual lessons he learned in the original book are not carried through to the film. For example, when he's a sparrow in the original book, he observes how small the world seems from the sky, and more importantly, how arbitrary and meaningless borders between nations seem. It teaches him to think of the world as a cohesive whole instead of a series of divided peoples, a good way to look at the world for a future king. In the movie, a bigger bird just hunts them and we get a lame action sequence which feels like a carbon copy of another lame action sequence we've already watched. That's far from being the worst thing this movie invents in place of the book's original story though. At one point in the movie when Merlin transforms Arthur into a squirrel, a random girl squirrel shows up and starts aggressively hitting on him.
A human boy, not a real Merlin, what'll I do? She won't leave me alone. Oh!
And then another female squirrel shows up and starts harassing Merlin.
Don't, really, now, Mister.
And, if you had to guess how long they keep this joke up for, would you guess maybe like 30 seconds, a minute, tops?
Thing.
7.5 minutes! They keep this joke about Arthur and Merlin being molested by squirrels going for 7.5 minutes of screen time. What the fuck?
Oh, you do that.
Now, look here.
I'm too busy being annoyed by how long this goes on to be weirded out by the concept of a scene where an 11-year-old boy has to escape sexual assault from an actual feral squirrel. Actually, scratch that. I am still weirded out by it. Speaking of Arthur, he is not a character. He is a cardboard. He doesn't even react when an owl starts talking to him.
Oh, what a perfect stuffed owl.
I beg your pardon?
He's alive. Oh, I'm sorry that I...
That's all right. He's much too sensitive.
You are face to face with a talking owl. Please show some emotion. Like, I could not describe to you one of his character traits if I had a gun pressed to my head by a feral squirrel. At times, Merlin feels like the film's actual main character because he's the only one that actually does anything.
Arthur's lack of clear personality isn't aided by the fact that he's voiced by 3 different voice actors throughout the movie, because 2 of them hit puberty partway through recording and had to be switched out. And for whatever reason, the director opted not to re-record the lines they already had. Sometimes you'll be watching a scene and then Arthur's voice will just suddenly change.
Archimedes, I wish Merlin was here.
My personal headcanon for this is that Merlin kept casting spells on Arthur that made him hit puberty and then uncasting the spell repeatedly because he thought it was funny.
And speaking of Merlin, near the end of the film, he very promptly gets mad at Arthur for genuinely no reason whatsoever.
Merlin, look! I'm a squire!
A stooge for that big lunkay.
What do you want me to be? I'm lucky to be Kay's squire.
Blow me to Bermuda!
And then he farts himself to Bermuda just so he can be missing for the film's 3rd act.
And that 3rd act in question, let me tell you, it's the shortest 3rd act I've ever witnessed in cinema. Like, I timed it. It's less than 7 minutes.
Making it shorter than the squirrel sequence. So, you know, priorities. Arthur's brother, who he's now squiring for, takes him to a jousting tournament, but he forgets his sword.
I forgot your sword.
Forgot my sword?
So then he gets chased across town until he just stumbles upon Excalibur.
And then picks it up and becomes king and the movie ends.
Hail, King Arthur!
Hail, King Arthur!
There's no climax, no trial for Arthur to overcome in which he must use the knowledge Merlin taught him to prevail, no resolution to the whole plot of his brother and family being shitty to him. He just lucks into becoming king. And then says he doesn't want to be king.
I can't be a king, Archimedes. I don't know anything about ruling a country.
I told you to leave the thing in the stone, boy.
And then the movie ends. I would elaborate further, but in the spirit of this movie, I'm just going to end this segment really abruptly without giving a real conclusion. You know that one Disney film from the 80s that you've never seen and can't remember the name of, but according to legend it almost bankrupted the studio? It's The Black Cauldron. Released in 1985, this is Disney's 25th film, and it's another attempt from the studio to create a fantasy film set in the medieval times. Clearly not their best setting. That's not all it shares in common with Sword in the Stone, though, because this film also lost the studio a lot of money. Except this time, it was a lot of money. In all caps. The legends are true. This film almost single-handedly caused Disney to close up shop right before the Renaissance started. So is the film really bad enough that it deserved to bomb that hard? Yes. Okay, let's be fair. Yes and no. It's quite bad by all means, but unlike Sword in the Stone, this one's bad in, like, a fun way. It was actually meant to be the studio's most ambitious film to date, a sumptuous historical epic to rival Lord of the Rings itself. Don Bluth left the studio with half the crew right before production began, but the studio was still in good company since Tim Burton and John Lasseter both stepped in to fill his shoes. Until they left too. This film was really just cursed from the start. Then the film got stuck in production hell for 5 years. Yes, 5 years. It was supposed to come out in 1980. It didn't. So the plot of this film is that Taran, a farm boy who dreams of one day becoming a knight.
Is this to be my life? Pampering a pig? I'm a warrior.
Gee, it sure is boring around here.
Finds out that his pig, Henwen, can see the future. An evil wizard called the Horned King, voiced by John Hurt, the goat, is hunting for this pig so that he can use its powers to find an artifact called the Black Cauldron, which will allow him to spawn an undefeatable evil army at his command.
Soon the Black Cauldron will be mine.
So, naturally, the smartest course of action is to kill the pig. I mean, sorry to Henwen, but the fate of the entire world rests upon the Horned King not capturing it, so I think better safe than sorry in this case. But I understand, it's a kid's movie, you can't kill off the pig, even though you chose to name it Henwen, which proves that you never had its best interests at heart. So instead of killing the pig, Taran is tasked with escorting her to a secret cabin so that they can hide there indefinitely. which could be for years. Hope you like pigs, Taran. All right, this is where the adventure officially begins. Let's see how long Taran holds out.
But without the help of my pig Henwin here, Henwin?
And he loses Henwen in less than a minute because he was too busy daydreaming about being a knight.
I'll protect you.
The greatest warrior in all Britain.
Fucking incredible. You'll quickly come to appreciate that Taran is possibly the stupidest Disney character. The silver lining is that because of this, Taran meets Gurgi, the best character in fiction.
Come on, the apple. Where is it?
Gurgi not know where the apple. Oh, poor miserable Gurgi deserves fierce smackings and whackings on his poor tender head.
As I'm assuming you noticed, yes, Gurgi's voice is very similar to Gollum's from Lord of the Rings. And it's very possible that that's not a coincidence because it's speculated that this performance inspired Andy Serkis's take on Gollum. I mean, Gurgi is clearly based on Gollum, so if it's true that Serkis was inspired by this performance, then there was a cute little crisscross of inspiration between the two franchises. That's your trivia dump of the day. So Taran breaks into the Horned King's castle, immediately falls over into a bunch of bad guys, and gets himself captured. What a fucking legend. Taran's gold streak doesn't end here though. He immediately folds to the Horned King and agrees to convince Henwen to tell him where the Black Cauldron is.
No! You can't! No! Stop! I'll make her tell you.
Dude, the fate of the entire world depends upon this. Just let the pig die. Actually, it doesn't matter either way because just as the Horned King is about to get what he wants, Taran gets scared and trips, defeating the Horned King in the process. And then manages to free his pig by throwing her into the ocean.
Swim, Hen! Swim!
Yeah, Henwen will definitely survive that fall. So after this point, Taran has basically no agency in the movie and things just kind of happen to him by chance. He gets freed from prison because a princess with a magic orb just happens to come through the cell he's in.
You're being held a prisoner, aren't you?
Yes.
I'm being held against my will, too.
Then he just happens upon a magic sword that starts doing all the work for him for the rest of the movie. They also stumble upon a guy with a magic harp who escapes with them. Then Gurgi stumbles upon them and they stumble upon some pig trails which takes them to a bisexual whirlpool which leads them to a bunch of fairies who just happen to know where the Black Cauldron is.
It's safely hidden in Morva. Morva?
So then they get the Black Cauldron, but then at that exact moment they get captured by the Horned King's men who happen to be there and then get taken to prison, but Gurgi also is there and then frees them. And holy fuck, this plot is so contrived. The story is moved forward by people stumbling onto stuff. And I have no reason to root for Taran as a character. He never earns anything, he just gets handed stuff. And the only times he does do something, it's him fucking up. And continuing this trend, it's not Taran that saves the day, but Gurgi by sacrificing himself to stop the cauldron.
Gurgi has no friends.
You don't have any friends.
Wait! No! No!
Hold on. Gurgi dies? You wouldn't kill the pig, but you'll kill Gurgi? This movie's fucking 0 out of 10. It's now on the bottom of the list. Then it's the epic climactic showdown between the Horned King and Taran. How does Taran defeat him? Well, he doesn't really. The Horned King just kind of stands too close to the cauldron and then gets sucked in and dies. That's the climax.
Curse you!
It's up there with Sword in the Stone for best climax. To give this movie its fair share of credit, it brings Gurgi back to life.
The cauldron for Gurgi.
We have made a bargain.
So, I take back what I said before. This movie is not on the very bottom of the list, but it was a close call there. So why does this movie feel so empty? Well,
For one thing, it has no humor. This is probably the only Disney movie I can think of that I can't remember a single joke from. If they wanted to make a movie like this, they should have gone all in on making it dark, and apparently the original draft of the movie was going to be far darker, but then Disney execs stepped in and forced the creators to soften the film's edges, and what we end up with is kind of an awkward compromise between light and dark, and it doesn't really work on either front. There are moments with perfectly good opportunities for jokes, like this part when Taran picks up a broom to defend himself with when there's literally a rack of weapons sitting right there, but the storyboarding is so poor that most viewers might not even see the rack at all because it's barely on screen. If you're gonna make us sit through a movie with the most incompetent main character of all time, you can at least get some humor out of it. There are a lot of half-baked ideas the movie throws out, like the magic harp, the magic bubble, the magic sword, the magical ability to make my patience disappear. But none of these magical MacGuffins are expanded upon in any meaningful way, and the movie just feels like it's bursting at the seams with ideas. Even Henwen ends up being completely irrelevant to the story and barely appears again after being chucked into the ocean. Unfortunately, the characters are just as underdeveloped as the plot is. There has never been a Disney villain more boring than the Horned King.
Its evil power will course through my veins.
And in general, this movie is suffocated by side characters. Let's see, we got Ilonui, Flurderflam, Dolly, and of course Gurgi. Wouldn't be the same without him. None of these characters, and I repeat, none of them, except Gurgi, have any purpose or arc or anything. The closest this movie gives us to character drama is Taran being a sexist little bitch.
It takes a great warrior to handle a sword like this.
It is a magic sword.
Ha! What does a girl know about swords anyway?
I think a lot of this is the result of trying to shove as much source material into one film as possible.
In the case of the Black Cauldron, we started with 5 books and had to condense them down into one. Primarily it's based on the Black Cauldron. And these books are from the Chronicles of Prydain by Lloyd Alexander. One of our problems was that there were so many characters and so much story that it was kind of a case of taking all of this material and condensing it into one story that we could put on the screen.
Even the animation, whilst mostly good, is victim to some bizarre creative choices, like the decision to use real live-action footage as a background at one point, which really clashes with the animated characters, and then they left these weird white outlines around them that should not have made it into the final cut, especially when films from the 40s could blend live-action with animation better than this. Maybe the animators didn't have enough time for cleanup because they were too busy being horny.
Where are you? Don't go. Now look what you've done.
I'll end on this note. In the final moments of the film, Taran acknowledges that he's no true knight, and he'll probably always be a farm boy.
I'm not a warrior. I'm a pig boy. What would I do with a sword?
Jesus, this is a Disney movie where the moral is that sometimes you just aren't good enough to pursue your dreams, so you should give up. In this case, he is right, though. So at the beginning of this video, I talked about Disney's shorts period. In the early 40s, the studio opted to move away from feature films and put most of their effort into shorts. So what did end up making it into theaters were just shorts compilations. As you can imagine, these films tended to be inconsistent in terms of quality, and that's what leads us to their 8th film, 1946's Make Mine Music. It's one of Disney's World War II package films, and out of all of the compilation movies Disney ever released, this one is the worst, but it also has the most shorts of any. This film is split into 10 segments, and every single one of them, somehow, manages to be boring. Each short is based around some simplistic idea, whether it be a moral teaching or just a visual
style that it wants to show off. And look, it's hard enough to make a short memorable. You have to somehow leave a lasting impression in a viewer's head after only a few minutes of screen time. You can't get a viewer truly attached to a protagonist in that amount of time the way you would in a feature film, so you have to hook them some other way, whether it be through the film's message, or an intriguing character study, or good comedy, or anything else you can think of. Something has to stand out. And in this film, only one of its 10 shorts leaves any kind of lasting impression on me, and we'll get into why shortly. That's hardly surprising. This film is basically just a Frankenstein's monster of unfinished ideas the studio knew they wouldn't be able to pursue because half of their animators were busy making propaganda. But even still, the shorts in this movie can just be mind-numbing, even with the, at times, dazzling animation.
The ladies don't understand baseball a bit.
There's one with a big pencil that draws stuff, and it draws a girl, but her ass is too fat, and so the guy's not into her, and then it has to slim her ass, which doesn't even make any sense, because who the fuck doesn't like fat ass? There's one with two hats that are in love, and if you've ever wanted to see hats make out, Disney's got you covered. There's one about two rival clans that all murder each other that subsequently was banned and chopped out of the film because it was too violent. It ends with violent domestic abuse. And then the ghosts of the dead clans laugh at it.
And they carry on the feud just like before.
This film is the gift that just keeps giving. Oh, and there's one short called Blue Bayou where it's a bunch of slow, sad blue animation of stuff moving gracefully. And then there's Without You, which is a ballad that plays over blue animation of stuff moving gracefully. Oh, and my favorite is Two Silhouettes, where there's this slow, sad animation of blue stuff moving gracefully. This movie's really blue. The animation is quite pretty, I'll give it that, but it's nothing groundbreaking and nothing at all happens during these segments. The film also hits us with some extremely horny animation, which, believe me, it doesn't end here. The final short is probably the only memorable one from the film, and it's about a whale who has 3 uvulas.
Tenor, baritone, and bass.
And each uvula gives him a different voice, and it's just this stretched out narrative where the whale sings, and then a sailor thinks he swallowed a singer, and then tries to kill him, and then he gets restrained.
Rescue the opera singer! Mamma mia! He's swallowed 2 opera singers! He's swallowed 3 opera singers!
And then there's like a sequence that feels like it goes on for like 10 minutes where like the whale like becomes famous and starts singing on opera, and all the whale's dreams come true. But then it turns out that was all a dream, and actually the whale did get shot by the sailor at the beginning.
I got to him!
And so it's just a short where a whale with 3 uvulas sings, and it was all fake and he died actually. Even though it goes on for too long, truthfully, I think this short is okay. It has some decent humor, and the ending is surprisingly poignant.
And somewhere, in whatever heaven is reserved for creatures of the deep, Willie is still singing.
For whatever reason, this is the only Disney film to not make an appearance on Disney+. And there are a few reasons why that might be the case. Maybe it's because of the band segment at the beginning. Maybe it's because they couldn't get the rights to Peter and the Wolf. Maybe it's because there's a part in the last short where the whale tries to sound black when he's singing.
Mama's little baby loves shortening, shortening. Mama's little baby loves shortening bread.
Maybe it's a combination of all of those things. But I personally think that the real reason it's not on Disney Plus is because they know it's just not worth it. There are other Disney movies that are more clearly a disaster than this one, but at least I have something to say about them, because this one just makes me want to go to sleep. Plus, it doesn't hold the historical significance of a Fantasia. And like, even its name, what does Make Mine Music mean? What does it mean? Of all Disney films, this one gives me the least to latch onto. Don't believe me? This whole segment was unscripted. It's the only one in the video that's unscripted because I didn't know what to write. I've just been talking into a microphone this whole time. In short, do not recommend, 2 thumbs down, 1 star, F-, Rotten Tomato meter, Razzie, Armand White recommendation, don't watch. Another shorts compilation, folks, except this time with slightly more of an overarching story and a lot more stereotypes. It's The Three Caballeros, Disney's 7th film. Released in late 1944, this was Disney's final wartime film, truly marking the end of an era. And here's a fun Disney fact for you. There is genuinely a decent amount of evidence to suggest that Adolf himself was a Disney fan. Yes, the Führer may have just been a Disney adult all along. And if that's true, this would have been the last Disney film he'd have ever had the chance to see. I mean, it's unlikely he saw it, you know, what with the war and everything, but then again, he'd have had to pass time in his bunker somehow, right? I should do more fun fact segments. That was fun. This movie is a bizarre concoction. It was made to commemorate Donald Duck's 10th anniversary, and it came out immediately before Make Mine Music, and like that film, it's a shorts compilation, sorta. It's part 2 of a government-funded project to promote goodwill between the US and Latin America, coming out after the vaguely educational Saludos Amigos. The movie starts out with a short about a penguin who aspires to warmer climates, until he actually gets there and realizes that now he misses the cold.
Never satisfied. Well, that's human nature for you, even if you're a penguin.
I actually quite like this short. It's very cute. It makes great use of cartoon logic for comedic effect. And I enjoy the second short too, where a boy finds a flying donkey, though it is a bit distracting how the narrator can't decide whether he wants to rhyme or not. After the second short though, the film takes a very bizarre turn. Donald meets a Brazilian parrot called Jose Carioca, and a Mexican rooster called Panchito Romero Miguel Junipero Francisco Quintero Gonzalez III. The film's from the 40s. They immediately become 3 gay caballeros.
Now we're 3 gay caballeros. We're 3 caballeros, 3 gay caballeros.
Just 3 gay caballeros. This is canon. They're sitting on a pride flag and everything. It's canon. Don't let Disney try to tell you it's not. Most of the film revolves around these characters exploring Mexico and Brazil, and Donald learning about Jose and Panchito's exotic foreign cultures through the lens of writers that had clearly never actually lived in any of those places, and were only making a film about it because they got paid to vacation there. This was released during the 40s when Disney still didn't really know what they wanted to make, and as a result, their movies could start feeling more like tech demos than films. Case in point, The Three Caballeros feels like a movie that exists to show off Disney's latest animation techniques. Look at this seamless blending of live action with animation. Isn't it mind-blowing? Look at this trippy shit. You won't be seeing this over at Warner Bros. The one thematic throughline that seems to underpin most of the shorts in this film is, I don't know how to say this, horniness. Donald goes to a live-action beach at one point and cannot believe just how attractive real-life women are. I don't like how the telescope got stiff there. And believe me, Donald's thirst for human women cannot be quenched. They have to drag him, kicking and screaming away from these poor women.
No, Donald, don't do that.
God only knows what he would have done otherwise. Now, I don't want to understate just how amazing this animation is for the time, especially the blending of live action with animation. It's kind of spectacular how well they were able to pull this off, and the film absolutely deserves credit for that. The whole movie is fast, colorful, vibrant, and ornate, but the movie as a whole can only be described as weird. And a bit monotonous, and very horny for a children's film. Also, some of the imagery in this film might give me nightmares.
We're 3 caballeros, 3 gay caballeros, they say we are birds of a feather.
The last stretch of the film is Donald presumably tripping balls on peyote and hallucinating women that he wants to have sex with, but for whatever reason his way of trying to seduce them is by showing them his ass,
which I guess actually makes sense because he is a gay Caballero.
Even critics at the time thought this film was weird and creepy and just a thinly veiled excuse for Disney to flaunt their new animation technology. I think the best description of this movie was given to us by writer Nathan Rabin. Somewhere between 1942's stiff and underwhelming Saladas Amigos and 1944's Wild and Wonderful The Three Caballeros, the vibe went from using animation and laughter to teach us about our friends to the south to Donald Duck is horny for human women. Here, and pretty much only here, he's less Donald Duck and more Donald wants to fuck. That's pretty much the size of it. Dinosaur. It's Disney's 39th film, and it hit our screens right at the turn of the millennium. It's also the first semi-recent Disney film on this list, and if you've never heard of it before now, that was no mistake. Disney's trying to keep it that way. There seems to be a general perception a lot of people have that Tangled was the first 3D animated Disney film, but that's just not true. As it happens, there were 4 3D animated films that predate Tangled. Tangled just happened to be the first successful 3D animated film Disney made. But the studio's first true venture into the third dimension was Dinosaur, and this film has aged terribly. In fact, between the film Dinosaur and actual dinosaurs, I'm not sure which one is more of a fossil. The animation in this film looks so dated in a way that no 2D animation ever will. And it's not just the clunky movement or the undynamic lighting that makes the film look ugly, it's the atrocious character designs on these dinosaurs. I hate their weird, inexpressive faces so much. I hate that they have vaguely human-looking teeth. It gives me a sense of uncanny valley. I don't like it. They could have made him look like an actual iguanodon dinosaur, but instead they decided to try to find a compromise between that and human teeth, and the result just makes it look like he has flesh teeth, and it's really traumatizing. Even visual components of this film that have nothing to do with the technology available at the time, like the washed out and bland color palette, are uninspired, and the script feels almost as bland as the colors do. The story follows Aladar, an iguanodon dinosaur who was raised by lemurs. He's charismatic, strong, and a natural leader, but above all else, he's lonely because he doesn't know anyone else who's like him. So basically, he's the most generic fish out of water Disney protagonist that we've ever gotten, including the actual fish out of water. He feels especially down at the beginning of the movie because it's mating season and there's no one for him to mate.
If only there was someone on the island for you. Well, you know, who looks like you but prettier.
They went and gave us a movie about an incel dinosaur before the Mickey Mouse film that we've been waiting for like 100 years. Resigned to his fate, he must simply watch the lemurs make love from afar.
Girls, I'm known as the Professor of Love, and school's in session. I can't wait to hear the mating advice of an old monkey.
I heard that in his day, that old monkey was quite a swinger. To hear him tell it, he put the prime in primate. Look what just pulled into town. Hey, ladies! Your buffet table of love.
If I have to sit through one more Disney movie that's full of sex jokes, I'm genuinely going to jump off that cliff right there. Disney, there's a clear correlation between the horniness levels of your films and the shittiness levels. Please take note of it because I want to see improvement in the future.
What you need is a little help from the love monkey.
The love monkey?
Ow, baby!
I kind of just wish that they didn't talk, like ever. That would be really nice. And seemingly I get my wish in the next scene because a meteor strikes the Earth. Why is this scene directed like Oppenheimer? Don't worry, it's not the meteor you're thinking of. It doesn't kill all the dinosaurs, it just kills everyone that happened to be on the island, which means that everybody Aladar and his family has ever known is now dead.
They're all gone.
Hey, at least they got to go out with a bang. In more ways than one. Objectively, this is one of the darkest moments I've ever seen in a Disney movie. All these characters we've just been seeing, including some children, are now dead. But the movie doesn't really treat it that way. The lemurs mourn for like a minute, but then they never bring this up again for the rest of the movie, and it barely even feels important to their character journeys that everyone they've ever known dies. I mean, I get that it's a kid's movie, and you don't want to put too much focus onto something as depressing as this, but at the same time, if you're gonna gloss over its emotional ramifications, why put it in the movie in the first place?
After this, Aladar and company stumble upon a horde of dinosaurs traveling to a new nesting ground. In the process, Aladar meets a cute girl dinosaur named Nira and a bad, mean dinosaur named Kron, who also happens to be her brother and also looks nothing alike her. He's the big bad dino who makes all the rules, and he also meets a dog dinosaur. A dognosaur. There is something weird about the creative decision to make one type of dinosaur only have the mental capacity of a dog, but every other type of dinosaur we see is sentient? Or is there just like something very mentally wrong with this one dinosaur? Another problem that would have been solved by having none of them talk. Basically, the rest of the film is Aladar and his new dinosaur buddies trying not to be killed by bigger, carnivorous dinosaurs as they try to find a new place to live. All the while, Kron insists on leaving the old and sick behind, which includes the dognosaur, because they're slowing the pack down.
If we keep going like this, we'll lose half the herd.
Then we save the half that deserves to live.
This, of course, generates conflict between him and Aladar.
They're having a hard time keeping up. Maybe you could slow it down a bit.
Watch yourself, boy.
And that's essentially the film's underlying message. Nobody should ever be left behind, and society should always accommodate those who need help. It's an admirable message, but they kind of messed up in how they portrayed it. This is going to be a problem in a decent amount of upcoming movies, so let me lay down my thought process in detail here. Every message gleaned from a piece of art can be interpreted in two ways: how it relates to the text itself and how it relates to the real world. Or as I'd put it, the intrinsic meaning versus the extrinsic meaning. Generally, when trying to represent an issue, writers will create a fictitious world that's meant to be an exaggerated mirror of ours. That way, even dum-dums will get it. Think WALL-E's Utopia or Ratatouille. If the writer's goal is to outline a problem within society, the mock society they create within their own work doesn't have to line up with the real world 100%, but the essence of the issue they are shining light on must carry through. And the solution to that problem should be presented in a way wherein it works in both contexts simultaneously. And it's here that Dinosaur comes up short. Kron is supposed to be a metaphor for the kind of person who believes that it's a waste of taxpayer money to support the sick and needy, and I can get behind shitting on people like that. However, the specific scenario it presents us with, in which Kron is leading a pack of starving dinosaurs to a new nesting ground as they're pursued by predators, makes his viewpoint sympathetic. The pack is dying of dehydration. They can't afford to slow down. If they relegated their speed to accommodate the very slowest, like the dognosaur for instance, it would put everyone's lives in danger, and it's very likely more dinosaurs would end up dying because of that. So to compensate for this, they try to paint him in as negative a light as possible, and he says all kinds of evil-sounding shit. But none of that changes the fact that Kron is still kind of right. The same rules that apply to a modern human society in which we have an abundance of resources do not necessarily apply to a survival setting such as this. At the very least, I think the film could have done more to show us how compassion and caring for the sick and needy is necessary to foster a true community, and without that, Kron's fellowship crumbles. As the movie currently is, Aladar is basically the only one who does anything useful because he's just so epic. Like, take the moment Aladar figures out there's water underground, which ends up saving everyone's life. Maybe it should have been one of the reject dinosaurs who made this discovery instead of him, showing that there are still ways that they can be beneficial to the pack, regardless of their physical strength, proving that Kron is in the wrong for not giving them a chance. Okay, I'll stop overanalyzing a children's film and go back to being goofy now. So, in the climax, Aladar challenges Kron for leadership of the pack, having found a faster way to the nesting grounds, but just as he's leading the dinosaurs away, they're all cornered by a group of Carnotauruses. Look at his little arms. It seems like they're done for, until they all band together as a pack and moo at them. They win by mooing at the Carnotauruses until they run away. This is the most unintentionally funny Disney climax. Then the Carnotauruses find Kron, the mean bad guy dinosaur, and kill him instead.
Then Aladar leads the dinosaurs to the nesting grounds, and it's happily ever after.
Any of you ladies up for a game of monkey in the middle?
Okay, I am up to here with the sex jokes. I'm gonna be honest, it's a pretty limp ending for an all-around limp script, but perhaps it didn't have to be this way. Apparently, the original drafts of the movie were going to be like a nature documentary, and none of the dinosaurs were going to talk. I fucking called it. The closest we ended up getting to this is the first 7 minutes of the movie in which none of the animals talk, which makes it all the more jarring when suddenly a bunch of monkeys start talking about sex. I think the finished version of the film is an awkward middle ground between two ideas. It's not a slice of life nature documentary, but it also struggles to be a traditional Disney film. Just looking at this film's storyboards really makes me wish it wasn't 3D animated. But then again, not all of it was 3D animated. A decent portion of it was filmed, namely the backgrounds. Almost every background in this film, including ones with extensive pyrotechnics, were captured with real cameras.
This plate is the foreground that was shot at the Disney Ranch. This is at the Arboretum. We had to use a lot of interactive light. This is part of the explosion plates. This is a miniature of the monster cloud itself. It was shot on an insert stage in Burbank. And here's a composite with all the black powder, the monster cloud in the background.
But this, too, places the film in an awkward middle ground visually. The use of live-action backgrounds doesn't lend itself to atmospheric or metaphorical lighting and weather that you'd get in an animated movie. Also, apparently the movie was originally supposed to end with the meteor hitting Earth and killing everyone except for the lemurs. If only Disney had balls and we'd gotten that ending. What a shame. I would have really loved to see Aladar screaming in pain as his flesh catches fire and everyone he knows dies. That would have been a good scene. A big issue with this movie is that it doesn't properly hit many of its emotional beats. Characters just accept everyone they know dying in a ball of fiery destruction, and when Aladar sees other dinosaurs for the first time, he accepts it pretty much instantly.
Hey there.
Despite the fact that it should be, you know, a big moment for him. And don't even get me started on the lemurs. Why are they even in the movie? I feel like they're just a leftover from an earlier version of the movie, if I'm being honest. None of them have any character arcs or anything. They just kind of ride on Aladar and make comments about stuff. They're like the gargoyles from Hunchback of Notre Dame, but monkeys.
Hey, sweetie, if you'll be my bride, I'll groom ya.
Look, I understand that Toy Story and its consequences were a disaster for the human race and all, and that in the wake of its success, Disney decided to just chuck out 2D animation in favor of the future.
Whoa, dude, 3D!
But the technology simply was not there yet to make the movie they wanted to. And even if it had been, this script is just bland and lame regardless. Toy Story still holds up visually today, most of the time. Because the main characters are toys, they're meant to look plasticky and shiny, so the limited technology of the time isn't really an issue. On the other hand, dinosaurs should not look like they are made of plastic. And they certainly shouldn't have terrifying nightmare faces and soulless eyes and flesh teeth. Get it off screen, I don't want to see it. Released in 1948, this film marked Disney's 10th theatrical release. I'm gonna say it now, Melody Time is the weirdest film Disney have ever released. Yes, weirder than The Three Caballeros. This movie consists of 8 shorts, and each one is more head-scratching than the last. The first short is a simple one about love, and it's perfectly acceptable if not a little bland. It's just another demonstration of Disney's ability to sync animation with music, and the same is true of the second short. The third is about Johnny Appleseed.
The Lord is good to me, and so I thank the Lord.
For the most part, Johnny just plants apple seeds, sings about God, and then dies and goes to heaven without facing much hardship. The fourth short follows a character named Lil Toot. He is not a rapper, but in fact a boat. Lil Toot is a cute, rambunctious little galoot who always finds himself getting into trouble and disputes.
Won't you ever grow up? Little Toot.
Well, things stop being quite so cute for Little Toot when his mischief ends up resulting in an accidental fucking terrorist attack on a densely populated city center. Welcome to the real world, Lil Toot. Enjoy rotting in boat jail. Listening kids, this is what'll happen to you little shits if you misbehave. Remember that. The fifth short is just another musical number accompanied by synchronized animation, not much to say here. And the sixth short is also that, but more bizarre. It amounts to little more than a trippy dance sequence with Donald Duck and a live-action piano player. It's like the Three Caballeros all over again. Things get very psychedelic at points, and it scarcely feels like a Disney movie at all. Like, what am I looking at right now? What I really want to talk about, however, is the final short, Pecos Bill, which is by far the most questionable of all of them.
Widowmaker was Bill's best pal, until along came that beautiful prairie gal.
Aw, shucks, a woman in the story.
That was my reaction too. This short tells the story of Bill. Bill is, and this is my best description of him, a superhuman cowboy man who routinely commits genocide and might be in an interspecies relationship with his horse.
Like birds of a feather. When Bill growed up...
Did they just kiss? Bill legitimately kills every Native American that he finds, and it's always played as a joke. I'm dead fucking serious.
Tribe of painted Indians did a war dance. Pecos started shooting up their little game.
Like we're supposed to be rooting for him. Yeah, get him, Bill. That'll show him what's what for trying to live here.
He gave them redskins such a shake-up that they jumped out from their makeup. That's the way the painted desert got its name.
But the plot thickens when Bill finds a rotoscoped girlfriend.
Heaven above, to form a token of undying love.
Naturally, his horse boyfriend gets jealous, so he bucks her into the atmosphere and she continuously bounces off her giant dump truck ass until she's propelled onto the moon, where she dies. I'm not making this plot up, that's the fucking short.
That devilish contraption of steel and wire kept bouncing that poor gal higher and higher.
Sure looked like she was a goner.
So, in conclusion, Pecos Bill is a masterpiece. Even though the horse clearly is a donkey, that's not what a horse looks like. And there's another moment in the film where they refer to a skunk as a cat.
Here come along a black and white cat.
But for every moment this film struggles to identify an animal, there's another one that is truly blessed. Melody Time feels like the result of cocaine and perhaps some deep-rooted prejudice against indigenous people. This movie has no thematic through line whatsoever. The shorts are totally mismatched, and even at the time the film was critically panned. The one thing this has on Make Mine Music is that it's not as fucking boring. At least this one had me entertained in a very bizarre kind of way. The kindest thing I can say about this film is that it's an untapped meme goldmine. Take that as you will.
Dash of overreaction, and I assume you know the rest.
Nostalgia blindness can only get you so far, Chicken Little. Released in 2005, this was Disney's 46th flick to hit the big screen, and one of the first I ever watched. Unfortunately, it wasn't well liked upon release, and its reputation has only gotten worse with time, but, fun fact, this wasn't Disney's first adaptation of the story. In 1943, they released a short film of the same name, which, if I'm being honest, still holds up quite well today. The short, along with the original story it's based on, Henny Penny, is essentially an exploration into political philosophy. It's about how fear-mongering and mob mentality can be used as a weapon to sow discord within societies and eventually lead to their demise. It's also an obvious allegory to World War II and what was happening in Germany at the time.
The sky is falling. A piece of it just hit you on the head.
The sky's falling! Hurry, hurry!
A hungry fox named Foxy Loxy represents a malicious outside force which turns a society of farm animals against their own leader.
Well, I suppose Cocky Locky knows what he's talking about.
But listen, girls, suppose he's wrong. He's only human, you know. And if he should happen to be wrong, we'd all be killed.
There was no reason for him to dress up in drag. They can't see him. He just wanted an excuse to do it. And you know what? He pulls it off. By convincing them that the sky is falling, he lures them out of their safe farm and into his cave, where he feasts upon the poor sheeple. Or in other words, it's one of those short films where the YouTube comments under it will be filled with, "This is what the party that I didn't vote for is doing." I think it's important to understand what the message of the original story was to fully appreciate how much this film does not capture it. Now, to be fair, it's totally okay to change the meaning or message of a text that you're adapting. Any good adaptation should should add something of value to the original work that distinguishes itself from it, but this film feels like it misses the point so drastically, and the new message it's trying to tell feels so botched that I can't help but raise me eyebrows and scratch me head. In the film, Chicken Little believes that the sky is falling when a piece of it hits his head, and he starts a mass panic. When the town finds out that the sky is not in fact falling, he's labeled a liar and a weirdo, and the entire town starts bullying him, because this is just the kind of town that will relentlessly bully a fucking child. The only people who still treat him with dignity are the other outcasts, like Ugly Duckling, a fat pig, and this fish guy who puts on face paint at one point despite always being in a helmet filled with water. Plot hole. 0 out of 10 movies, someone contact CinemaSins. None are more cruel to him over this embarrassment than his own father, who never has his son's back at any point throughout the movie.
Is this what hit you?
Oh, no, Dad, it was definitely a piece of the sky. I'm telling you.
Piece of the sky.
No, Dad, no.
Quiet, son. This is embarrassing enough already.
It makes it pretty clear he cares about his own reputation more than the well-being of his son.
It would be better for you just to lay low, don't call attention to yourself. Yeah, game of hide and seek, except the gold is never to be found, ever.
He's probably earned the title of most hated Disney parent ever, which isn't necessarily because he's the worst, but more so just how the movie handles him. But we will get back to that. So as the movie goes on, it becomes increasingly clear that Chicken Little was actually right and the sky is falling because aliens are invading Earth. Yeah, the real bad guy in this movie isn't Foxy Loxy, but rather aliens. Foxy Loxy is here as a gender-swapped comedy relief bully character, or maybe he's just in drag again, I don't know. But she's not really relevant to the plot at all. Now, it can be hard to root for Chicken Little at times because his decisions are very frustrating. At one point, physical evidence that Chicken Little was right crashes directly into his bedroom, and what does he do? He hides it from everybody to investigate it himself.
Hey, what's wrong?
Nothing.
You sure?
Mm-hmm.
I thought I heard you yell.
No.
I want to like you, man. Stop making this so difficult for me. Stop it. So because of this, the town continues to think Chicken Little is insane until a full-scale alien invasion finally proves him right. Chicken Little's dad only loves him again once he is proven right. It's genuinely kind of implied that if Chicken Little hadn't been able to prove he was always telling the truth, his father would never have been proud of him again. And yet the movie acts like his father is redeemed just because he apologizes.
You're never there for me.
What?
You were there when I won the big game, but not when I thought the sky fell. And not at the ball field, and certainly not now.
You're right. You're right. But you need to know that I love you. And I'm sorry if I ever made you feel like that was something you had to earn.
Okay, look. Not believing Chicken Little when he said the sky was falling with no evidence is one thing. It's perfectly reasonable for his father to have felt that way, but throwing him under the bus for the sake of your own reputation is something else entirely. The movie goes out of its way to portray Chicken Little's father as actively ashamed of him.
What if I joined the baseball team?
Please try not to get your hopes too high.
Okay, Dad.
It is a huge insecurity for Chicken Little that drives him to attempt to prove himself at every opportunity. An entire sequence of the movie, the baseball game, is exactly that, Chicken Little putting his own interests aside just to make his father happy. After an entire movie of that, of Chicken Little's characterization being defined by his relationship with his father, his borderline neglectful father, you can't just say that his father's heart was always in the right place and a little sorry excuses everything. That's just no. And I think that's why he's so widely hated, even though there are definitely other Disney parents who are worse. Whereas someone like Mother Gothel is cartoonishly evil, a lot of viewers might relate to having a parent like Buck Cluck, and seeing him get such a hasty and half-assed redemption may have rubbed a lot of these people the wrong way. Moral of the story, if you want to tackle an issue that a lot of viewers might find a little too real, make sure you do it right. Anyways, they realize that the aliens are only attacking because they lost a child somewhere on Earth, because the aliens actually stand up for their children. Take notes, Chicken Little Dad. Then we get an invasion montage with some quintessential butt rock playing over it.
so they figure they can bargain with the aliens by giving them back their lost child. Upon being reunited with their child, the aliens fuck off and the day is saved.
Well, then, this is awkward,
Yes, it is.
I suppose I should...
Put the big guns away?
Yes.
I cannot tell you how sorry we are for this whole misunderstanding.
Oh, dear goodness, we are so very sorry.
Yes, we are.
The movie ends with us finding out that Foxy Loxy has suffered brain damage and will now presumably be taken advantage of by this pig guy for the rest of her life.
She got her brainwaves a little scrambled during reconstitution, but no worries, we can put her back the way she was.
No! She's perfect. Lollipop, lollipop.
Wait, what the fuck? The end. So the moral of this movie is obviously supposed to be, don't judge people, or in more modern lingo, don't cancel people. Everything the original story was trying to say about the dangers of fear-mongering is nowhere to be found. And that's no mistake, this is one of those adaptations that flips the original meaning of the source material in an effort to kind of outsmart it. Psh, you think fear-mongering's bad and a form of mob mentality? Well, guess what? Not believing the fearmonger is the real mob mentality. They should have listened to Chicken Little all along. But to me personally, this message doesn't feel as powerful or poignant as the old one. Ultimately, this just feels like a film that kind of misses the point. Oh yeah, and it's also very cringe.
Oh, no, not the book. How many have seen opening the book before? Close the book. We're not doing that.
And it's one of those movies that thinks it's funny just because it's being meta.
Here's how to open a movie. No, I don't think so. It sounds familiar, doesn't it to you?
Hey, DreamWorks did it, so now we gotta.
His name is Kirby?
They left him behind?
Darth Vader's Luke's father?
There are also a lot of issues in this movie's presentation. There's something audibly wrong with the sound editing. At points, sound effects are mixed way too loud and it sounds unnatural. This movie also chooses to reuse voice recordings at points.
What did he big acorn level fly?
What did he say?
Big acorn level fly. Big acorn level fly.
And if that was not enough, this movie also reuses animation.
Loser!
Penny, happy mallard.
Ugly duckling.
Where was I?
Ugly duckling.
Oh.
Is this a creative decision of some kind? I don't know, but I don't like it. Worse yet, this movie looks ugly as sin. I don't care that it's old. It's ugly. The character designs are whack. Everyone in the background looks half-finished. The way they move gives me nightmares. This is the ugly duckling of Disney movies. Even the continuity seems questionable. Like there's the shot where a rabbit and a cheetah are yelling at Chicken Little from out of this building, and then it cuts back to Chicken Little as he responds to them.
The sky is falling.
Are you crazy? No, it's true.
But suddenly they're standing right in front of him? Like, was there a weird time jump between these two shots? Or are they just copy-pasting the same character models? Oh wait, they're just copy-pasting character models, aren't they? I think that's actually worse. Editing update, there is so much more copy-pasting going on in this movie than I initially realized. It's fucking crazy. If I can give this movie any praise, it's that it can be entertaining. And hey, at least they tried something new with this one.
I guess only girls are good at honest communication and sensitivity.
But at the end of the day, if they gave out an Oscar for cringiest motion picture, this would be a shoo-in. From what I gather, the film was originally going to be a little more similar to its source material, focusing on a plot where literal wolves in sheep's clothing infiltrate a summer camp in order to eat all the campers, with only the main character Henny Penny realizing what was going on.
The original story of Chicken Little as a girl was a character who had this overactive imagination, and she always thought something scary was going to happen.
That's not a burglar trying to break in. No. That's just the shutters blowing against the house. Yeah.
But at some point in development, the execs suddenly decided it had to appeal to little boys, so they forcibly changed the main character to a boy.
And Michael, the very first time he said, I think Chicken Little would be more interesting as a boy. If you're small, that's a bigger problem for a boy. And since he is our boss, he won. He won that argument.
Forced in a bunch of bad pop culture humor, removed a bunch of important emotional scenes in favor of baseball and action, insisted that there be aliens in the movie because that little boys like that, I guess, and effectively ruined the movie. A tale as old as time, song as old as rhyme, executives ruin the movie. Saludos, amigos. This is Disney's other film about Latin America starring Donald Duck and his bird boyfriends because, of course, there are two of them. But this one tends to get overlooked owing to the fact that there's not much to say about it. Released in 1943, this was Disney's sixth feature film. We already talked about The Three Caballeros, which is a direct follow-up to this film, but in all honesty, the strengths and weaknesses of Saludos Amigos are quite different from those of its counterpart. For one, this movie is a lot more normal, and its greatest sin is probably that it's kind of boring. Not Make Mine music levels of boring, but it's kind of an unremarkable film. Where The Three Caballeros was full of life, maybe a little too much life, maybe even the kind of life that will create new life, this film is a lot more laid back. The story behind this movie is that the US government paid Disney to take a trip to Latin America and then make a film about it. The idea behind this was to improve relations between Americans and their friends to the South. This film puts education as its first priority. That's not to say that it's never entertaining, but it primarily exists to teach Americans about Latin America. And when I say teach Americans about Latin America, I more so mean present an Americanized view of Latin America that is, to a large extent, informed by pre-existing stereotypes. Now, I don't think this film was made with any ill intent in mind. In fact, it seems like it was made out of a genuine desire to depict Latin America in a positive light.
The mosaic sidewalks that are found all over Rio. These designs are a tribute to patience and artistry, preserving a Brazilian tradition.
It just feels, unsurprisingly, like a product of its time. One thing about this film that stands out from any other on this list is that it directly breaks the fourth wall at points. And I'm not just talking about meta jokes here and there like Ralph Breaks the Internet, but rather the animators pausing the film to talk candidly with the audience about their trip and the process of creating the very film you're watching.
Artists, musicians, and writers setting out for a trip through Latin America to find new personalities, music, and dances for their cartoon films. This is what can happen to a big city when a crowd of cartoonists are turned loose. Among the sketches was a promising actor, O Papagayo. With the help of the wardrobe department, he becomes Joe Carioca.
It's like the movie is intertwined with its own behind-the-scenes DVD extras. It makes for an interesting watch when compared with other Disney films, to say the least. The film consists of 4 shorts, which all kind of flow into each other, which helps make the film feel more like a cohesive whole. But like Melody Time, they feel a touch disjointed. The theme that supposedly holds this film's 4 shorts together is that they're all about Latin American culture, but as previously mentioned, this amounts to little more than stereotypes, and it doesn't feel like the film actually has a real through line. In all honesty, this film comes off like a budget Disney film, likely because it was. World War II was raging and the ongoing Disney strike had crippled the studio. The result is a film that is not only remarkably unambitious, but also shorter than any other Disney film ever, clocking in at less than an hour of runtime. I don't even consider the shortness of this movie to be a bad thing. It was certainly easy to get through and didn't feel like a burden in the way that some other movies did. However, this movie offers little besides a fallacious depiction of South America and some exceptionally unexciting shorts.
The highlight of this film is Goofy smoking. Goofy is confirmed as a smoker, and Disney can't go back on that no matter how many times they try to censor this film to remove it. Stop trying to hide the truth.
This is a movie I wanted to love because one of its directors is basically a human teddy bear. He has a YouTube channel, and he's just such a lovely and wholesome guy, but I'm sorry, this movie just isn't that good. This is Disney's 44th film, and it came out in 2003, and its name? Brother Bear. Brother Bear was directed by 2 tried-and-true animators, Aaron Blaise and Robert Walker, neither of whom had ever helmed their own project before directing this film, and it shows. While there are some good ideas at play here, they're muddled by a mess of creative decisions that, in my opinion, don't make a whole lot of sense. And one of them is the decision to start the movie in a 4:3 aspect ratio and then change it to widescreen about a quarter of the way in. I get the idea behind it. It's supposed to metaphorically represent the main character's view of the world getting wider when he becomes a bear. So the screen literally gets wider. I get it. But like, this makes the film's opening feel weirdly restricted visually due to having less room on the screen to actually work with. And I can only imagine how many people who screened this movie thought the entire thing was in 4:3 upon starting it and zoomed their display in, never realizing that the movie eventually changes to widescreen. On that note, the storyboarding in this film also seems a little bit off at times. There's an over-reliance on close-ups that makes a lot of this film's action feel more claustrophobic than it should. Compound that with the shrunken aspect ratio at the beginning of the film, and the audience's field of view feels strangely diminished. You just don't get the dramatic and emotional shots that other Disney films are known for, and it really kind of stifles the film's drama. Just compare the sequence in which a main character dies in this film to the stampede sequence from The Lion King. Whereas The Lion King creates shots that emphasize the massive scale and emotional implications of this sequence, this film just hits us with a bunch of immobile wide shots and some claustrophobic close-ups for good measure. Other times, bad storyboarding can create problems. For instance, a character will put his spear down directly behind him, will cut away, and then when we cut back, his spear will have teleported like 2 meters away just so that he can't grab it fast enough to generate tension within the scene. Oh, and Phil Collins did the soundtrack, and his lyrics they have no subtlety whatsoever. He just bluntly states what's going on screen at all times.
This has to be the most beautiful, the most peaceful place I've ever been.
But if we're really gonna rip into this movie, we have to talk about its worst attribute: its story. The plot of Brother Bear is as follows. Kenai, voiced by the Joker, is a young boy who wants to do right by his tribe, but one day he leaves out a basket of salmon that gets taken by a bear.
You didn't tie it up, did you?
No, it took me 2 weeks to make that basket.
I'll go get your basket.
And you don't even have to ask it. In an attempt to redeem himself, he very smartly tries to 1v1 this fully grown bear and reclaim his fish. Once it's clear he's in trouble, his brothers race after him to assist, and one of them dies, saving Kenai's life.
Sitka! Sitka! Sitka, where are you?
Grief-stricken, Kenai and his surviving brother, Denahi, hold a funeral for their fallen kin, and then Kenai, being the genius protagonist that he is, swears vengeance on the bear and sets out to 1v1 it again.
Killing that bear won't make you a man.
A man wouldn't just sit here and do nothing.
What are you doing? You already got one of your brothers killed by doing this, my guy. What the fuck? By the skin of his teeth, he manages to kill the bear this time, but then the spirit of his dead brother, Sitka, suddenly shows up and decides to turn him into a bear, to teach him a lesson about it's not cool to go around hating bears. But at that exact moment, Denahi shows up and assumes Kenai has been killed, thinking that the bear in front of him is the culprit, and as such, vows to kill the bear Kenai has become. Hey, spirit of Sitka, cool plan and all, but do you think that maybe the best way to teach your brother a lesson wasn't to transform him into an animal and then pit your other living brother against him, putting him in mortal danger? I think there may have been better ways to go about this personally. So Kenai runs away and meets some Canadian moose.
Please don't eat us! You wouldn't like us, eh? We're really gay.
They show up a lot throughout the movie, not sure why, and then Kenai meets a smaller bear. A brother bear. This is Coda, and over the rest of the movie they develop a complicated and poorly paced relationship. There's a point in the movie where Kenai and Coda have a tender bonding scene together.
Thanks, Sitka. If it weren't for you, I would have never met Kenai.
And then instantly have a falling out in the very next scene.
Why don't you just grow up?
Fine, I'll just go on my own then.
Fine, go ahead.
And then immediately make up in the scene after that. It doesn't matter though, because they have another falling out shortly after this. Kenai realizes that the bear he killed was Coda's mom.
She stands up real big and yells, "Go away!" I've never been so scared in my life.
Going after the bear.
Coda?
What follows is the crowning jewel of the movie, which is the scene where Kenai confesses to Coda what really happened.
You know that story you told me last night?
Yeah.
Well, I have a story to tell you.
What's it about?
Something so bad.
Everywhere I turn, I hurt someone. You trusted me, believed in me, and I let you down.
Why does the movie decide at this precise moment to channel an 80s music video? I don't know, but it kind of takes some of the impact away from a scene where the main character tells his best friend that he kind of sort of killed his mom. But hey, it's really funny. Thank you, Phil Collins.
So Coda runs away, but then he sees the Canadian moose from earlier. They seem to be in an argument.
Let it go.
I can't believe you totaled a mammoth,
Oh,
eh?
come on.
Afraid I cannot accept your
It
apology.
was in my blind spot.
But then they make up because of the power of love.
Being a brother means nothing to you.
Well, what about the time your hooves froze in the pond? Who sat with you all winter, eh?
You did.
Because I love you. I can change.
Hey, not there. That's the spot.
And having witnessed this, Coda decides he wants to make up with Kenai now. This emotional beat does not work. And I'm not only saying that because it's paced terribly, though that doesn't help. It's kind of disingenuous to imply that this moose argument is at all applicable to the falling out that Coda's had with Kenai. This isn't just a little spat. He killed your mom, man. The anger is justified.
So Kenai, being all sad, decides to take a stroll, and when he's in the middle of nowhere, Denahi shows up to finish him off. But then, just in the nick of time, Coda shows up to save him. How did he know where they were? Does it really matter at this point? But this puts Coda in danger, meaning that Kenai has to sacrifice himself to save his brother, Bear. And this selfless act proves that he's learned his lesson about something, and thus Sitka finally changes him back into a human, because pitting his surviving brothers against each other, I guess, just wasn't entertaining anymore.
But then he decides he actually wants to be a bear forever now.
He needs me.
You don't have to permanently transform yourself into a bear to look after Coda. You could do it as a human. Is Denahi really okay with this?
You know, he did look better as a bear.
He doesn't mind his brother transforming himself into a bear after spending the entire movie trying to hunt bears out of vengeance. He comes around quick. It feels like the movie is just bending the characters to its will because it wants to hit a certain beat in its climax. And on that note, this is one of those Disney films that kind of loses its message in execution. The film is very pro-conservation of nature, pro-pacifism, which on its face is fine, but the way it goes about presenting that message is to imply that humans and bears can and should coexist peacefully. It even ends with the implication that bears can be domesticated. Like, I understand saying that you shouldn't go out and kill bears for no reason in a modern setting, but when we're talking about people that live a hunter-gatherer lifestyle, they don't have a choice. Bears wandering into your house and stealing your shit actually is dangerous. I think the moral of this film should have focused more on the revenge is bad side of things rather than whatever it went with instead. It's a Disney movie, I get it. It's not a representation of reality, but bears are not dogs. I need to know that you guys know that. Bears are not dogs. They're in fact very different. Oh, I bet I surprised you with this one. Bet you didn't think you'd see any of the classic, iconic Disney films this low on the list. But you did. I think 1953's Peter Pan, the studio's 14th theatrical release, is one of those films that everyone knows but shockingly few have actually seen. Because if everyone had actually seen this movie, there'd be a lot more discourse about how fucking racist it is.
Many moons, red man fight pale face, lost boys.
I mean, I'm sure I don't have to explain the premise of the film to anyone who hasn't seen it. Peter Pan is a boy who never ages, and with the aid of his fairy Tinkerbell, he fights against the evil Captain Hook. Everyone knows that. But what most of them don't seem to know is the plot of the actual Disney movie, which is as follows. Peter Pan shows up outside the bedroom window of a bunch of children one night and abducts them away on an incredibly dangerous adventure. One of the kids that Peter Pan finesses into accompanying him on this journey is a girl named Wendy, who Tinkerbell immediately gets jealous of because Tinkerbell is in love with Peter Pan. Now, something about this smells sussy to me, because Tinkerbell is implied to be immortal in this film, so she's probably thousands of years old, and she has a crush on a little boy. But then again, Peter doesn't age, so for all we know, he's actually like a middle-aged man stuck in the body of a little boy.
I am Peter Pan.
But then that would make Peter the creepy one for flirting with Wendy, And no matter how you look at it, someone here is creepy. This jealousy that Tinkerbell feels towards Wendy, who receives some mild affection from Peter, drives her to try as hard as she can to kill Wendy at every opportunity she can find. That's not some kind of extrapolation or exaggeration of the story. That's what happens.
Don't you know you might have killed her? Tinkerbell?
Tinkerbell, who is one of the most iconic Disney characters appearing all over their theme parks and DVD intros, is a character who, in her only appearance in a mainline Disney film, repeatedly tries to murder a child because of her pedophilic urges. Don't worry though, that plotline will quickly leave your mind once the racism kicks in.
Now remember, the Indian is cunning, but not intelligent.
I don't know how Disney justifies removing other films from their streaming service for racism when they've allowed this one to stay up, which I think is arguably the very worst.
Now you know why the red man's red.
Make Mine Music's crime was that it had a song that briefly includes a line deemed to make use of black scent. This movie straight up depicts Native Americans as subhuman savages that white people should not mingle or associate with. Thank God they never go to Cannibal Cove. It is a plot point in the film that Wendy becomes disenfranchised with Peter and the island because she hates the Indians so much.
Oh, get him firewood.
Do you want to stay here and grow up like savages?
I have never seen a depiction of Native Americans that is this offensive before in my life, but this movie gets to stay on Disney Plus because it's just so iconic, you know? It seems the children's minds have been corrupted by the Indians to the extent that they can't even remember their own parents now.
Surely you haven't forgotten our real mother. Did she have silky ears? Oh, no, Michael. That was Nana.
But it's okay because Wendy comes to the rescue by reminding the kids of the lives and Western values they left behind.
Well, a mother, a real mother, is the most wonderful person in the world.
Which causes the kids to immediately renounce this new lifestyle they've embraced.
Your mother and mine.
Oh yeah, I'm white. Get that gross native paint off my face. Yuck. In all fairness, the meaning behind this scene is supposed to be that Wendy is reminding the children of the lives they left behind, and they accept that growing up is inevitable and they can't live in a world of imagination and childishness like Peter Pan does. However, the way it's executed just ends up making it seem like the meaning behind the scene is that they're rejecting native culture so that they can go back to their superior white civilization. And in the spirit of this film not knowing if it wants to be the most racist Disney movie or the most sexist Disney movie, cue Tinkerbell. The last we saw of her, she'd been banished when Peter Pan found out she was trying to murder Wendy.
Tinkerbell, I hereby banish you forever.
Captain Hook catches wind of this, and since women have such easily manipulatable femoid minds,
Oh, yes, a jealous female can be tricked into anything.
he stages a meeting with her and pretty much immediately tricks her into giving away the location of Peter's secret hideout on the condition that Hook will kidnap and presumably kill Wendy.
We'll Shanghai Wendy. Take her to sea with us. With her gone, Peter will soon forget this mad infatuation. What's that, my dear? You could show us the way?
She fucking sells out her only friend and compromises the safety of a bunch of innocent children out of jealousy. She's literally worse than most Disney villains. What the fuck?
Thank you, my dear. You've been most helpful.
Deserved. So Hook finds Peter's hideout and the two of them have an epic final battle. Peter Pan decides that this is a good time to let his massive ego get in the way of everyone's safety, and he refuses to use his powers against Hook so that he can prove he doesn't need them to beat him.
You wouldn't dare fight old Hook, man to man.
I'll fight you man to man, with one hand behind my back.
Fly, Peter! Fly!
No!
Children are in danger. Children that you brought here. Just fly, goddammit. You can't just artificially add tension into your climax by making the main character a giant dingus. Okay, well, sometimes you can, but this isn't one of those times. Of course, Peter wins and Captain Hook humps the ocean to safety. Also, Tinkerbell saves Peter from a bomb and then the movie acts like she's redeemed herself. Yeah. Sure. So in the many years since this film has come out and cocky main characters have become the hottest new thing, I think writers have since learned that there is a limit to how cocky you can make your lead character until it will start to make an audience resent them. And I think rule one is that if a character's innate cockiness results in them putting other characters in danger, audiences will not like them. The only way that can work is if it's an intentional character flaw that's part of a larger arc. Maybe if Peter Pan's refusal to use his powers resulted in one of his friends actually getting hurt, he would have learned that no matter how invincible he may be, the people around him are not, and he has to actually take accountability for his actions. And in an ironic kind of way, he would have grown up. It would have been the children teaching him something. So what do I think of this film as a film, minus the many relics of its era that it contains? While it has some decent animation and some fun fight scenes, I feel like this film as a whole lacks important pieces of a compelling family-friendly story. None of the main characters are actually likable, least of all this insane psychopath bitch, and none of them have arcs. Wendy is set up as a child who needs to accept that growing up is a natural part of life, and at the end, the movie tells us that Wendy has grown up, but we don't really see why. We don't see her become more mature or wise. All that happens is she gets bored of Neverland and says she wants to go home. That equals growing up, I suppose. I personally would have preferred an ending where Tinkerbell was sent to Guantanamo Bay to pay for her crimes, but that's just me. Sequels. We all want him until we don't. Disney sequels in particular have developed something of an odious reputation, and for good reason. But Fantasia 2000, which is Disney's 39th film, releasing in 1999 even though it has 2000 in its name, is no ordinary sequel. This film can't continue the story of its predecessor because its predecessor had no story, so instead it aims to recapture the vibes of its predecessor to limited success. Fantasia, despite being a movie that performed very poorly at the box office, is regarded as a staple in Disney's history. You've doubtless seen the iconic Magician's Apprentice short featuring Mickey Mouse about how corner cutting will always come back to bite you, and the rest of the film is still remembered today as a dazzling and ethereal marriage of experimental animation with beautiful orchestral compositions, if not a little slow at points. Interestingly, Fantasia was not planned to be a single film. Originally, Disney planned to re-release the film every few months in perpetuity, but with a few shorts swapped out in favor of new ones every time, meaning it would never be the same film each time you watched it. But unfortunately, the film underperformed, so the idea was scrapped. If this idea had been realized, however, it would have pioneered a whole new type of cinema altogether, a film that keeps changing every time you watch it. Imagine that. It's like being a Star Wars fan. Even though this idea never made it to fruition, Fantasia's legacy continued to cast a mighty shadow for decades. Fast forward to 1999, and Disney needed something to celebrate the end of the 20th century. Ultimately, the decision was made to bring the long-dead idea of making a second version of Fantasia back from the dead. It would be just that, however, a second version, and only that, not a continuous stream of versions slowly morphing over time. And so, right at the turn of the millennium, Fantasia 2000 was released. This feels, to me, like a half-baked and watered-down version of the original film. The once elegant-looking monologues now look like cheap DVD menus.
For example, the Danish illustrator Kai Nielsen drew these sketches for a segment inspired by Wagner's Ride of the Valkyries.
I don't really have anything to say about half these shorts. One of them is flamingos with the yo-yo. That's the short. One of them has flying whales that are 3D and they fly, and they fly now. But then there's also a handful of genuinely fun ones. My personal favorite is the Noah's Ark short starring Donald and Daisy Duck as they frantically try to load up the Ark with animals.
They chose to give him that facial expression while making that pose up against the wall. It was intentional, they know what they're doing, it's on purpose. One thing that really sticks in my craw about Fantasia 2000 is how lazy it feels at times. The film straight up recycles The Magician's Apprentice short from the first Fantasia film. I get that it's iconic and all. I get that the original 1940s idea for a follow-up Fantasia was that it would reuse a lot of the same shorts, but that was 60 years ago, and the whole point of that idea was that Fantasia would never leave theaters, so new shorts would have to be cycled in one at a time. But this isn't part of some never-ending flow of Fantasia experiment. It's a standalone sequel, so reusing shorts from the original just feels like a cheap way to pad the runtime. If I can give props, the final short is aesthetically gorgeous and thematically poignant, conveying a theme of death and rebirth. There is something kind of poetic about ending this film marking Disney's transition into the new millennium on a short about how there are certain things that can never be truly killed. Like Disney. Disney is eternal. Disney will never die. You might as well just give them your money, right? But ultimately, again, like many of these other shorts compilation films, I don't have much to say. Wait a second, is that Penn and Teller? They got Penn and Teller in this movie? Sorry, I just have to rework the list real quick. Just give me a second. Alright, Fantasia 2000 is now at number 1. It's now canon. This is the official new ranking. Another Disney film adored by millions that I'm about to roast the fuck out of. Look, when I talk about things, especially kids' movies, I usually don't try to focus my criticisms based on plot holes or facts and logic arguments, because when you're tearing apart like 100-year-old fairy tales based on the fact that like the internal consistency of the magic doesn't make sense, it does get like kind of cringe after a while. But I'm sorry. In the case of this film, I'm gonna have to go full facts and logic on it. I'm going full 2000s era internet reviewer on this film. I'm sorry, guys. Released in 1959, this is Disney's 16th film, and it's considered the end of their OG era. Sleeping Beauty takes place in a mythical world where everyone has an IQ of below 70. We open the movie on King Stefan, a woefully incompetent ruler incapable of protecting his people from Maleficent, and he just had a kid. Long live the Princess Aurora! Because rich people just have it so goddamn easy, the king has summoned some fairies to max out all of his daughter's stats and make her better than everyone else.
My gift shall be the gift of beauty.
I wish that was available to the public. But before the final fairy can bestow her gift, which, based on how the rest of the movie plays out, presumably would have been brains, the evil Maleficent shows up to put a curse on her, stating that before the sun sets on Aurora's 16th birthday, she will prick her finger on a spinning wheel spindle and die.
She shall prick her finger and die.
Oh no!
Maleficent is a great villain and a boss bitch, so I won't question her too much, but why the 16-year timer instead of just something that takes effect immediately? Unless she's just doing it for the psychological impact it would have on him to get to know his daughter before she dies, in which case, Maleficent is fucked in the head, and I like her style. Don't worry, King Stefan's top advisors, the three good fairies, save the day by altering the curse so that Aurora won't die upon pricking her finger, but instead she'll merely fall into a deep sleep, a sleep from which she can only be awoken by true love's kiss.
And from this slumber you shall wake, when true love's kiss the spell shall break.
And of all things, why did you guys have to pick true love to be the thing to wake her up? That's like the hardest thing to come by ever, you dummies. You'll quickly come to appreciate that these three fairies are pretty much just as dumb as Taran. And you know what? There's an argument to be made that they're even worse. Their basic levels of ineptitude at everything is quite frankly scary. So this is their plan. They decide to take Aurora in the dead of night, sneak into the woods, and turn her into a flower.
I'll turn her into a flower. Don't you see? A flower can't prick its finger. It has nails. No, that's right.
Yep, can't see any downsides to that. She'll be safe from maybe being in a coma one day by spending her whole life as a plant instead. Mission accomplished. As great of an idea as this plainly is, at the last minute they decide to instead smuggle her to a cabin, stop using magic altogether, and just wait there.
for 16 years. 16 sad and lonely years in the words of the narrator.
Many sad and lonely years.
I know they want to hide her here in order to keep her safe so that Maleficent can't tempt her with a voluptuous, pointy spinning wheel, but I don't know, man. It kind of seems like you're just giving Maleficent exactly what she wanted by separating Aurora from her parents for her entire childhood. I know Maleficent's wording was a bit vague, so it's hard to tell if she meant it would happen on her 16th birthday or any time before it.
Before the sun sets on her 16th birthday, she shall prick her finger.
But most people online seem to interpret it as Maleficent saying she would prick her finger on her 16th birthday, which begs the question, why separate her from her parents for 16 years? Why not just take her away on the day of her birthday? This movie's no match for my facts and logic. So one childhood of complete social isolation later, after living with her throuple lesbian grandmas, Aurora spends most of her time with woodland creatures doing stuff like cosplaying marrying an owl. As you do.
Why, it's my dream prince. Your Highness. No, I'm really not supposed to speak to strangers, but we've met before.
Yeah, this is normal. And this summons forth a creepy stalker whom she promptly falls in love with. Again, as you do.
Once upon a dream.
I can't call 911, I'm an owl.
This pervert is Prince Philip, her betrothed, though neither of them know the other's true identity. How very Shakespearean. But when Aurora tells the three good fairies that she met someone she likes, they immediately banish her from ever seeing him again.
You've met some stranger?
You're already betrothed. Betrothed? Since the day you were born. To Prince Philip, dear.
You must never see that young man again.
Oh, no. No. I can't believe it.
Wait, are you guys seeing the issue here? The girl who's cursed to be in an eternal slumber unless true love's kiss finds her is banned from seeing a boy she likes. Do you guys have brain worms? Do you not want there to be any chance she'll find her true love? She literally came home and handed you guys a layup to beat this curse, and you just said, no. We sold you to another guy as an infant. Sorry, arranged marriages are always great. Consult any other Disney movie as proof of this. Now, under normal circumstances, I would commend them for protecting Aurora from a creepy stalker perv she met in the woods, but they don't know that he's a creepy stalker perv, and I don't think the writers saw him that way either, if I'm being honest. But if you thought the fairies were a little questionable up to this point, you haven't seen the half of it. They decide to bring Aurora back to the castle on the day of her 16th birthday instead of the day after. What? Why? The sun hasn't set on her 16th birthday yet. Why now? You've just effectively rendered all those years of hiding pointless. The curse is still in effect. Upon bringing her back to the castle while the curse is still in effect, they then immediately leave her unattended.
Let her have a few moments alone.
What are you doing? Fuck it, my headcanon is that the three good fairies are working for Maleficent. There's no other explanation. So surprise, surprise, Aurora gets hypnotized by Maleficent's magic and pricks her finger on a spindle and falls into a coma.
Rose! Rose! Oh, I'll never forgive myself.
Well done, guys, all around. You isolate Aurora for 16 years, debatably for no real reason, and you still let her prick her finger and fall into an endless sleep, all while turning away the one thing that could have fixed that. Absolutely genius. The sagacity doesn't end there, folks, because upon realizing that they had failed, the fairies react by sprinkling dust over the entire city that causes everybody to fall asleep. I don't know what this really achieves other than killing anyone who happens to be in the bathtub or standing near a ledge, but it basically just equates to them roofing an entire kingdom so no one finds out how badly they fucked up. So Aurora is essentially out of commission for the rest of the movie, making her an even more irrelevant character than she already was. Philip the pervert just inherits the title of main character and finishes the quest against Maleficent for her.
All the powers of hell!
That was easy.
Then, as his reward, he gets to make out with an unconscious girl, his favorite type. Thank God for true love. Is this a good time to mention that Philip is supposed to be in his 20s and Aurora just turned 16? No? Okay.
Certified lover boy, certified pedophiles.
Thematically, this movie just feels kind of like a limp, wet noodle. The main character isn't the actual driver of the plot, and the more you read into it, the more it feels like it has some questionable things to say about what constitutes true love. There are definitely some things to write home about. The fluid animation and its use of color are absolutely beautiful. I especially love Maleficent's design, and just Maleficent in general, but where the movie comes up lacking is in its characters and plot. This movie also has its fair share of pointless scenes, like the one of Prince Philip's father and Aurora's father arguing about nothing for a while, and then they get drunk, because that's what future abusive father-in-laws do. This does not seem like a good bloodline. Please stay away, Aurora. Let's just be thankful that this isn't more like the original fairy tale it's based on. They say there's only one movie that can challenge Chicken Little for its title as cringiest Disney movie, and that film is Ralph Breaks the Internet. This film broke the internet in 2018, making it Disney's 57th theatrical outing. Did I mention that it's cringe?
Yeah, boy.
Yeah, boy.
Yeah, boy.
Boy.
Yeah, boy.
Yeah, boy.
Yeah, boy.
This is everything you don't want in a sequel. It butchers the characters, messes up the world's continuity. Hell, it even looks worse than its predecessor with markedly grayer and flatter animation. It's lazy. It's a lazy sequel.
You know it.
So lazy they couldn't even be bothered to give it a good title. Like, think about it for a second. The first movie's called Wreck-It Ralph. So why isn't this one called Ralph Wrecks the Internet? Why Ralph Breaks the Internet? Like, come on, it's right there.
Shouldn't it be Ralph Wrecks the Internet?
Yeah, but break the internet, it's like a thing.
Right, it's just wreck the internet kind of sounds better, doesn't it?
You're not wrong.
Okay, just because you're self-aware that it's a bad title doesn't mean you're off the hook for giving it a bad title, Disney and your fucking meta humor. Then again, it could have been worse. At one point in this movie's development, it was gonna be called Wi-Fi Ralph. So, at least we're not in that timeline. Now, the premise of the first movie was that the video game characters inside arcade machines are actually live, and if their machine gets retired, all the characters from that game will end up homeless and trapped inside a power outlet for all eternity until it gets unplugged. Then they just die. It's a grim fate that everyone wants to avoid at all costs. Thus, the characters understand the importance of ensuring their games run as smoothly as possible, and the person playing never thinks anything is wrong or broken. This movie opens with Ralph and Vanellope immediately fucking with their game while someone is trying to play it just because they're bored, literally vandalizing the track and driving out of bounds. While the player tries to move Vanellope back onto the track, she wrestles with her for control.
Get back up on the track, Swatty. You're going to lose. I can't. It's like it's driving itself.
Resulting in the machine breaking.
Litwack's gonna unplug the game.
The first thing Ralph and Vanellope do in this movie is destroy Vanellope's home and ruin the lives of everybody who lives inside of it, all because Vanellope is bored. And they seem oddly nonchalant about it.
What did you do, Ralph?
Nothing.
Leave him alone. He was just trying to make the game more exciting.
This not only kind of serves to spit in the face of the last movie's stakes, as they fought to protect her arcade game from exactly this fate, but it really doesn't do a good job of endearing an audience to the film's protagonists. Vanellope does get sad about her game being shut down, but her reasoning is entirely selfish.
I mean, like, what am I gonna do all day? If I'm not a racer, Ralph, what am I?
She only seems upset because now she won't be able to race, instead of seeming upset because she failed her people as the Queen of Sugar Rush. If you rewrote the scene so that she reflected more on how her irresponsible behavior cost her people their home, she would seem a lot less selfish. Counter-argument, maybe they're supposed to be unlikable so that you can watch them grow throughout the runtime of the movie. You could make that argument, except Vanellope doesn't really have a self-improvement arc in this movie, only Ralph does, and neither of them acted like this in the last film. I can't help but feel like the writers have regressed them just for the sake of generating conflict. And while we're on that note, Why isn't Ralph in his own game? The arcade is open right now. In the last movie, it was a huge plot point that Ralph's absence put his entire game in jeopardy because it couldn't function properly without him. Yet for the entirety of this movie, he's just gallivanting around outside of his game, and it's never acknowledged. Look, I get that the logic doesn't have to be airtight in the silly kids video game movie, but this isn't just a problem because it ruins the sanctity of the great Ralph lore. This is a problem because it makes the main character stupid and unlikable, which will go on to be a core issue with the entire movie. So Vanellope and Ralph have to journey to the internet to try to buy a replacement part for the machine before it gets decommissioned permanently in 24 hours. The premise of this film is that the internet, much like a video game, is a real physical place with living people inside of it. It's like the metaverse, but not terrible. What a great opportunity for some super timely modern humor that will definitely not age poorly. Maybe even some YouTuber cameos from people who will definitely not go on to get cancelled.
What the heck? Dang internet!
This is the timeline where she lost Wi-Fi and never uploaded the ukulele video.
The only thing I've ever groomed is my 2 Persian cats.
So in an effort to make money quickly in order to fix Sugar Rush, after bumming around in an MMO for 16 hours out of the 24 they have, Ralph and Vanellope decide that the best way to make money is by making memes. Yes, they actually make money with memes.
Wreck-It Ralph here with the Ghost Pepper Challenge.
I don't know who at Disney thought this is how the internet works, but I wish I lived in their reality.
Yo, maybe what's trending right now?
Bee puns.
What do you guys think memes are? I'd actually be fascinated to know.
And while we're being so meta and modern, let's just have a scene with the cool casual Disney princesses where they make meta jokes about their own movies and also sell an entire new line of $40 princess dolls available now on shop.disney.com. And the audience gets to enjoy a great scene with nothing but pop culture references.
I want one too, you guys. I'll get my mice on this.
Oh, no.
Is it relevant to the plot? Well, did you know Disney owns a lot of IPs?
This place is bonkers.
All available for a simple subscription to Disney Plus, Fuel the Magic? Yeah, this movie kind of turns into a commercial for Disney after a while. They even take shots at people who criticize Marvel movies.
In Captain America, the First Avenger, Red Skull refers to Yggdrasil, the World Tree. Are we to believe, sir, that you are a descendant of that tree?
Don't ask questions, just consume it. Consume the Marvel slop. Don't ask questions, just give us money. Give us money. Then Ralph experiences hate comments.
Just a worthless bum alone on a pile of bricks.
Now, this scene is obviously meant to be a parallel to real-life content creators who get hate comments, but Ralph is a fictional video game character, and who writes comments like this about fictional characters in video games? It would be like writing a hate comment to Bowser. Like, people just take their video game storylines really seriously in this world, I guess. After this, Ralph overhears Vanellope saying she's considering staying in an MMO they explored earlier in the film.
I want this to be my life. I can't go home now.
Now, as previously mentioned, Ralph is a selfish asshole in this movie, so much so that upon hearing that his best friend might be happier somewhere else, he immediately tries to sabotage the entire MMO without even talking to her first so that he can trap her back at the arcade with him forever.
I heard a rumor that you could give me a harmless virus kind of thing that might be able to slow down the slaughter race game.
Allow me to introduce you to Arthur. Arthur will find some defect in the code. Then he'll copy that defect and spread it all over the game.
Never mind how that will potentially ruin the lives of everyone who lives inside the MMO, like this character voiced by Gal Gadot.
Come on, kids, the game's crashing. Let's go.
Oh man, I can just hear the fear and urgency in her voice. Gal Gadot strikes again. Remember how I mentioned that one of my main issues with this film is how the characters have regressed into stupid, unlikable assholes? One movie ago, he was willing to sacrifice his dream and his entire relationship with Vanellope just to keep her safe. But in this one, he goes to the dark web to buy some glitches and deploy them into an MMO while Vanellope is still inside.
Distributing insecurity. Distributing insecurity.
We'll be fine, but your code isn't part of this game. We gotta get you out of here now.
Keep in mind, it's an established rule in the world's lore that if you die outside of your game, you die permanently. That basically means that Ralph is unleashing a terrorist attack upon a game that currently has his best friend inside of it and could very well result in her death. Ralph, I think you might be a bad guy after all, bud. Now this kind of echoes a character beat that was in the first movie where Ralph believes that he has to destroy Vanellope's car to prevent her from racing in order to save her life. Both times he's taking autonomy away from Vanellope and attempting to control her, but at least in the first instance, he does it because he thinks it's to save her life. But ultimately, going against her wishes ends up being the very thing that puts her in danger, something I thought Ralph would have learned from come the second movie, but instead, he's far worse now. He still doesn't value her autonomy or, based on his decisions, her safety. You could argue that there are other aspects of Ralph's arc from the first movie that this film ignores, like him learning that he doesn't need validation from others to feel good about himself.
There's no one I'd rather be than me.
But I don't want to get too bogged down on this, so we'll go back to talking about the plot. So obviously Ralph's plan goes wrong and the glitch wreaks way more havoc than he intended, ultimately escaping into the internet itself and then cloning a bunch of toxic Ralphs all over the place.
Shout out to everyone who was on Pornhub when everything got replaced with Ralph.
Now the whole internet is filled with toxic Ralphs.
All aboard the toxic gossip train. You're chugging down the tracks of misinformation.
And the only way to stop it is for Ralph to grow as a person and let Vanellope pursue her dreams without him.
It's not right to hold a friend back from her dreams. You don't own her. You need to let her go. It's gonna hurt a little bit when you do. But you're gonna be okay. No matter where she goes or where she lives, she's always gonna be our friend.
That's a nice lesson and all, and I'd say the scene works decently well emotionally, but the path that led here feels so forced and out of character that the heartfelt nature of the scene is somewhat diminished. So Vanellope forgives Ralph and starts a new life in the MMO, which now contains her source code. How did fictional characters get hold of her source code and upload it into their game? Fuck if I know. All I know is that the second the MMO's actual programmers find it, they're going to patch it out and Vanellope will die permanently.
But I don't want to be that guy, but they never dealt with the glitch. It's still loose in the internet. They dealt with the toxic Ralphs, but the glitch that created them, the movie just kind of forgets about.
You know it.
This whole movie feels like one big missed opportunity. There are so many ideas for a sequel to Wreck-It Ralph that would have been infinitely better than this, and didn't require the characters to regress into emotionally stunted assholes. Why the internet? It's a concept that has almost nothing to do with these characters, unless you're a boomer executive who's just like, video games? The internet? They're both technology, they're both the same. One thing that kept crossing my mind throughout the film was, if every video game character is sentient, shouldn't there be more versions of Ralph and Vanellope out there? Theoretically, there should be a different Ralph for every copy of his arcade game, right? Maybe even different versions of Ralph that live inside of the internet since he's a famous character. Why not have a film where Ralph and Vanellope somehow get transported into a different arcade and have to deal not only with an entirely new landscape of games, but also meet alternative versions of themselves who might also be evil? Who knows? I know that the market is kind of oversaturated with multiverse movies right now, but hey, it certainly wouldn't have aged as poorly as Screaming Goat memes and Hot Peppered Challenge. Why is it called Burning Man? Maybe some of the internet jokes would have been funnier if Disney were willing to be even slightly critical of anything. Like if there was a Pinterest building that had 1 million rooms you couldn't enter without making an account, or if there was an abandoned MySpace skyscraper covered in cobwebs,
or if a man-child came and killed all the Twitter birds and put X's over their eyes. Guess they would have needed a time machine for that one though.
Or maybe even a Disney building in the shape of an evil wizard's tower controlling everything. Too on the nose?
Sorry guys, I remembered that the next film that I had to talk about was Wish, and I kind of I sat on it and then slept on it, which is actually what happened when I watched Wish for the first time. So, whatever. Anyways, I'm back to it now. Wish. What an exciting film. It came out in 2023. It was Disney's 62nd film. But here's the thing. It's no ordinary Disney film. It was an anniversary film, released to commemorate the studio's 100th year of existence. So surely they couldn't possibly fumble a film of such importance, right? This isn't mine, by the way.
So here we are, the big 100. Disney's officially a century old. And how have they chosen to celebrate? With Wish. I sure wish this movie was better. After a string of flops, Disney really needed a hit with this movie. Not only was the studio hemorrhaging money, not only had public opinion largely turned against it by this point, but the film was a celebration of the company itself and everything it had released in the last 100 years. If this movie were to bomb, it would be deeply embarrassing for the studio as a whole. And deeply embarrassing it was.
Thanks for not eating me, John.
Don't mention it, Bambi.
The idea behind Wish is that a handsome king, Magnifico, the movie makes sure that you know he's handsome and that everyone has a crush on him,
And someone that I like to kiss.
Oh, dear.
takes people's wishes, causing them to forget whatever they had wished for in exchange for granting some of them.
When you turn 18, you get to give your wish at a ceremony. Then once a month, he grants someone's greatest desire.
But after our main character, Asha, has a meeting with him in which he tells her that he has no intention of granting her grandfather's wish to inspire people because it's too vague and therefore dangerous.
It's too dangerous.
Dangerous?
Too vague. Create what? A rebellious mob, perhaps? To inspire them to do what?
She turns on him, and for the rest of the movie plots to bring him down and return everybody's wishes to their rightful owner.
It's not fair. They deserve more than...
I decide what everyone deserves.
Now, here's what confuses me. Did she not already know this was the case? Everyone knows that he only grants one wish per month. This is established to be common knowledge. At the beginning, Asha basically spreads pro-Magnifico propaganda.
Do you cry? Oh, no, and you won't even miss it when you say goodbye.
But after her meeting with him, she acts like the fact that he doesn't plan on granting everybody's wish is a terrible revelation.
Most of these wishes will never be granted?
Was it not already obvious that he can't grant everybody's wish if he only grants one a month? Asha, can you do math? At its core, Magnifico's ideology is actually quite reasonable. You can't just grant everybody's wish willy-nilly. Society will collapse. The film even alludes to some tragic backstory for him where his family and homeland was destroyed.
When I was young, my entire family, our lands were destroyed by selfish, greedy thieves. If only I'd known magic then.
But it's never elaborated upon. He might have a sympathetic reason for acting the way he does, but we never get to find out what it actually is. In an attempt to make him seem like an unreasonable evil villain, the writers add in the caveat that he could give people back their wishes, but he won't because he's mean and he wants to hoard them.
Can't you just give them back?
Excuse me?
The wishes you're not going to grant.
They give their wishes to me, and I make it so they forget their worries.
The point of this is just so that it's easier for you to side with Asha. Why is he doing this? Because he's evil. He snaps when, just a few locals question him.
How do we know our wishes are safe? We never see them.
Why can't we see them?
Why can't we remember them?
How brazenly they question me.
And in case it wasn't clear yet that he is in fact evil, he sings a song about how he's evil, and it's probably the worst Disney villain song ever.
I let you live it for free, and I don't even charge you rent. I give and give and give and give. You'd think they'd all be content. And this is the thanks I get.
This is awful in every way. If I could kill it, I would.
See this kingdom, I built it up, and you still complain, ungrateful much.
This is disgusting.
And the song ends with him turning to a book full of dark magic, which corrupts him even further and makes him yet more evil. That really is a trend with recent Disney films, isn't it? So Asha wishes upon a star that there was something she could do to take down Magnifico, and what do you know it, an extremely marketable star plushie thing shows up to grant her wish. It also makes it so that her goat sidekick starts talking, so that it too can be a marketable plushie.
I'm talking. I am talking. Ah, who knew my voice would be this low?
Isn't the joke where a cute animal starts talking with an unexpectedly deep voice still so funny after all these years? But despite the fact that the star is seemingly invincible and all-powerful, it doesn't actually do very much to help Asha throughout the movie. It's still pretty much on her to do everything. There are points throughout the movie when Asha needs to sneak somewhere to steal something or gather some information, but the star could easily have done it on its own with no risk, but you know, that would have been too easy. So she shows up back at the castle, and it takes surprisingly little convincing to get her friends to commit treason with her.
Magnifico is not the man he claims to be. A revolution, one thing he can't keep down. It's us.
Why are the songs in this movie so bad? Then even Magnifico's wife joins in on the rebellion because, did I mention he's evil?
The good in him, I've watched it melt.
But unfortunately, they're too late to stop him. He's gotten so evil that now he's just announcing to his people that he's evil and he hates them.
There will be no more hope, no more dreams, and no escape.
It is you who betrays your people!
Nope.
And intentionally turning them against him for some reason, even though that he pretty much had them wrapped around his finger and could have gotten them to do anything he wanted.
Mirrors, mirrors on the wall, who is the handsomest? Me!
Excuse me, why didn't he say of them all? It didn't even rhyme. What the hell, Disney?
I win!
And then it immediately blows up in his face when he gets defeated by them utilizing the power of prayer. My favorite.
Will be greater than all his magic. So I make this wish. So I look out at the stars just like me. I stand before the wishes.
It's one thing to have a cartoonishly evil villain. It's another thing for the movie to establish a tragic backstory and semi-understandable ideology for its villain, and then have him simply announce to the world at large that he is evil, and then get trapped inside a crystal forever.
That is not funny. Get me out of here at once.
No.
There was potential there. This seems like a huge missed opportunity to explore an actually interesting character, and on that note, this film really struggles with its characters. There's very little that can be said about any of them.
This is objectively impossible.
Take Asha. Asha is the main character of this film. Now, most Disney protagonists have some kind of dream that motivates them to keep pushing through the hardship that life throws at them. It could be anything: to open a restaurant, to sail the seas, to be a good king, to become a treasure hunter, to rebuild a broken family. Clear goals with deep personal meaning for the characters. It's a Disney staple, which I'm sure is why they chose to make an entire film about that very concept, wishing upon a star. So, in a film that centers around wishes as an idea, you'd expect the main character to have some kind of lifelong wish that drives her. Right? The fact of the matter is that Asha has no discernible goals in life other than to overthrow Magnifico and to save the day. She wants to see her grandpa's wish get fulfilled, but that's not exactly a character-defining wish of her own. It's just a wish for another wish to get granted. So even when the movie was given a golden opportunity to shed some light on what kind of person Asha one day wants to become, it shies away.
Well, I think this wish just speaks to her character. She wants nothing more than her family to have everything they could want.
I find it a unique I want song that is so generous. Usually when a character sings about what they want, it's personal.
We don't get a sense of what her passion in life is. At one point near the beginning of the film, we find out she's an artist.
I like to draw. Is this anything?
But this is never mentioned again and goes nowhere. Maybe her wish could have been to pursue a career in art. Or if you want to go in the other direction, why not fully commit to making her wish be that she wants to grant other people's wishes? Pure selflessness. It could have been what makes her kind of special and the perfect candidate to overthrow Magnifico. But we just never see her attempt to help anyone with their own personal wishes other than her granddad. For a film about wishes and how important they are to people, it's odd that we only actually learn about two named characters' wishes. So allow me to try to reimagine the plot of this film a little. Imagine if Asha actually did wish for the power to grant other people's wishes, and she was granted power like Magnifico's, making her the anti-Magnifico. Asha could go running around granting wishes for people in secret, forming a kind of underground wish society. It would be like wish fight club. Of course, Magnifico would eventually catch on to the fact that something was off before realizing that there was another sorcerer threatening his status as the town's only wizard. This would provide him with a much more understandable reason to freak out and go crazy, unlike what's in the released cut of the film. And hey, if you want to tie up some more loose ends, why not reveal to the audience that he made the same wish as Asha long ago and started granting everybody's wishes, just trying to do right, but this recklessness is what caused the unnamed, vague, terrible thing that happened to him in the past. I could see how granting the wishes of society's worst people would be a problem, and now he's afraid of ever repeating the same mistake, thus explaining his paranoid state of mind. This almost feels like such a no-brainer. I'm kind of surprised it's not in the movie. As for the ending, there are multiple ways it could be improved. At the end, Asha and Magnifico could have a showdown between their ideologies and maybe come together and realize that people should grant their own wishes instead of relying on magic or stars or whatever.
Now, you can make it be.
It's so simple.
Maybe a wishing star's job should be to guide people instead of deciding their fate for them. But again, he doesn't have to be a complex villain for the movie to work. He can be cartoonishly evil. Just make him fun evil instead of lame evil. The characters are the core of the movie, but unfortunately everything around them is kinda lame too. The movie is shooting for a storybook aesthetic by making everything look watercolor. Cool idea, right? Kinda. Not executed well though. Everything looks kinda smooth and textureless, the colors look washed out, there's no motion blur which people generally associate with the kind of cheap 3D animation you'll see on TV shows. And the backgrounds are always in focus, meaning the shots have no depth. And trust me, the complete lack of focal length in any of these shots starts to look bizarre after a while. Let's just compare it to another movie for a second. Look at this shot. See how the background is out of focus so that the characters and the foreground pops out? It looks like that for a reason. On the other hand, with this movie, I have to keep reminding myself that it's not a PS3 game, but hey, at least they were trying something new with the visuals. There are certain shots here and there I can appreciate for their creativity. The music, on the other hand, I cannot compliment at all. The music in this movie is bad. Like, really shockingly bad for a Disney movie. The lyrics have already been made fun of to hell and back, so I don't think I even need to get into that too much.
Here's a little fun allegory
that gets me excitatory. I'm a star.
Watch out, world, here I are.
But everything else about these songs just isn't good. The vocals are all overproduced and compressed to the point of sounding like a robot. The melodies are a generic attempt to copy Lin-Manuel Miranda's style without any of his talent, and the majority of songs don't advance the film's plot. In most Disney musicals, key story events happen during songs, making them feel like they're woven into the narrative. Here it feels like the plot just stops dead for a few minutes so that Asha can have a dance party with some forest animals about how she's a star.
When it comes to the universe, we're all shareholders. Get back for your system.
If you can cut almost every musical sequence out of a film and have it not affect the plot at all, that's a red flag.
See, that's where all the balls of gas come from.
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
Okay, look, I'm being very mean to this film, but the truth is that it does a lot of things competently. There are worse Disney films than this one. At least it ticks a lot of boxes that a Disney film should tick. But that's part of the problem. This film feels like it's doing everything by the book, as if the execs are scared to take any risks whatsoever, instead favoring mediocre predictability.
How can we ever thank you?
That's easy. Just keep wishing.
Well, since this movie was viewed as being so important, it seems like Disney execs tampered with it a lot. You may have seen cool concept art of the scrapped Starboy character. Hell, there's even a fully voiced animatic scene of him shapeshifting into various animals with Asha up on YouTube. And yes, it is more fun than any single scene that made it into the final movie.
Whoa, look at me go! I had no idea horses could move this fast. I mean, their eyesight is trippy, but yeah, that's better. I wonder if I could go even faster. Why would humans ever walk on two legs?
We could have gotten a likable genie-esque Starboy character, but this movie was put through the rewrite ringer so many times that we got a marketable plushie instead. Also, originally there were going to be two villains, Magnifico and an evil version of Queen Amaya, and they actually seemed to have chemistry too.
Amaya, darling, did you hear me? I am impatient.
I heard you. I'm coming.
And lucky for you, I'm devilishly good with a pair of tweezers. What are you doing? Mireille, darling, sweetheart, baby, Pookie, please do not devour those wishes. That one's my mother's.
In that case...
Be serious. Why did we get robbed of this? We've never had a Disney film where two villains shared the spotlight before, so it seemed like this movie almost tried something new, but then it got stamped out at the last minute. Who's responsible for these changes? We'll never know. All I know is that this movie seemed like a bunch of theoretically good ideas that went horribly wrong.
And I actually made it this far without cracking a joke about how this is what happens when you order a Disney movie off of Wish. So, round of applause for me, guys, because I did it.
Guys, I'm gonna level with you here. I'm starting to get a bit concerned because I just realized that it's been over 2.25 hours, and I've only made it through 14 films. That's not good. It wasn't supposed to take this long. And I still have, what, 49 movies to go? How long is this going to take? Hold on a second. Okay, so if I continue at the same rate, 49 films will take 8 hours. I don't think this is going to be a single video, guys.
What have I done? 8 hours? I can't do that. I'm not Quentin Reviews, but there's nothing I can do now. I'm in too deep to quit, but am I ready to take on the Herculean challenge ahead of me? I still have 49 movies to go. My God, my life is Disney now. I have joined the ranks of the great Disney adults who came before me. I am Disney. I am Disney. And Disney is me. God forgive me.